Phil's gone too. Phil's gone too. Okay, it's now 6:01 p.m. Good evening. This is the March 15, 2022 regular meeting of the the Township Board of the Charter Township of Meridian. Meeting will come to order. If you would all join me and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mr. Lemaster. Could we have a roll call, please?
Supervisor Jackson.
Present.
Clerk Guthrie.
Present.
Treasurer DeShane.
Present.
Trustee Wazinski.
Present.
Trustee Sumner.
Present.
All present.
Thank you. Item 4 on our agenda is presentations. We have 2 tonight. The first is on the Deer Management Program. We will hear from ladies. If you will introduce and gentlemen, if you will introduce yourselves.
Thank you. My name is Jane Greenway. I'm the Senior Parks and Land Management Coordinator with Meridian Township. And also here with me tonight is Emma Campbell, our Stewardship Coordinator, Chad Fedowa, our Wildlife Biologist from the Michigan Department of Natural Resources, and Mike Ellis from the Meridian Department of Public Works. And we are here tonight to present to you the information from our 11th year of deer management. And as you know, this program was developed 11 years ago in response to many complaints from residents. And the Township Board tasked us with coming up with a deer management plan and putting it into effect. We also, back then, did surveys and looked at a lot of different options in addition to harvesting deer in terms of education and driving awareness. So if you have any interest, the entire deer management plan is on the township website, and it has a lot of information, but we're just going to go over what happened this year. So what I'm talking about is the archery season that was from October 1st through January 1st, and then the police call, which was January and February of 2022. So in total this year, we had a very successful year. We harvested a total of 330 deer. And that's a record for us. Over 7,000 pounds of venison was donated to the local food banks. So that's quite a bit of venison. The numbers in your report, you can see a chart, a grid, where we have the number of deer that are harvested year to year. And you can see the last 2 years, the numbers are up significantly. That's because the police call began in winter of 2021. So that's a huge help. The other thing that helped us harvest more deer was having more support from the Township Board, and we're very appreciative of that, of the additional funding that provided some more staff time. It used to just be me in the very beginning, and now it's we've been able to still maintain our program, and it's very cost effective. We spent just over $92,000 total, everything, staff time, all of the equipment, everything, and that is incredibly affordable compared to other communities that hired sharpshooters or did things like sterilization and things like that and spent hundreds of thousands of dollars. But we were able to do that because we have such strong community support. We have the most recent community survey, the Cobalt Community Survey, we had over 80% support from the residents for deer management. And we get calls all the time thanking us. Still do get calls from people complaining, but a lot less than we did in the very beginning. And we're just very proud of this program. We haven't had any accidents or injuries in the past 11 years. We have hunters placed anywhere we safely can in the entire township. The police call is more focused on areas where there are high deer car collisions. And we were also focused on the ecological benefit of our parks and land preserves. So we have hunters all over. Our program is recommended a lot by the DNR to use as an example of a successful program. So we're very proud of that. We get calls from all over Michigan and calls from as far away as the state of New York. But again, the reason that it's kind of easy for us is because we have so much support from the community and from the township board. So we're very grateful for that. I'm now going to turn it over to Emma Campbell, our stewardship coordinator, and she's going to talk a little bit about the effects of what the deer management program has done to the land preserves, to our 2,000 acres of parks and land preserves. And then Chad Fidowa will talk a little bit about population and kind of how our numbers look and what we could be doing moving forward. And then, last but not least, I have Mike Ellis here, he's actually the real reason that we harvested so many deer. Some of the money that we had with the additional funding, we bought a cooler. And Mike Ellis and some other DPW employees keep that cooler clean. They do all the work. They take the deer down to the beef barn where it gets processed, and they're really the ones that make our jobs very easy. So we do want to recognize Mike Ellis, but I'll let Emma talk a little bit more about the science aspect of this.
Hello, thank you for having me. I apologize, there's mud on my jeans. I just got out of a program with the public at Nancy Moore, so I tried to be very clean. But yeah, so I do want to just say first that coming in January of 2020, I'd never had to work a program like our deer management program. And it's just been a total honor, and I'm just very grateful that I get to work with this township. It's been an amazing experience. But really, the biggest thing moving forward in our program is it's providing a lot of benefits to our residents in our community, and they're seeing that. We're getting those calls that they're seeing a marked difference. But it's also very important for all of the land that we've invested a lot of money into and a lot of hours. I've invested a lot of labor in it too, and so have a lot of volunteers. But it's just it's very good for our deer herd, and it's really good for our parks and our preserves. And deer do browse on all the things that I don't want them to. I wish they would learn to eat invasive species. That would be really great. But this is just really important moving forward for all the hard work that we're putting into our parks and preserves. And we know that it makes a really big difference in the spring when we're getting all of our spring ephemerals and all of our wildflowers that we're really working hard to bring back to these areas. And so the deer management aspect is so important. If we didn't have that aspect, we would be wasting a lot of that time. Really moving forward to we still do get complaints from those areas where we're just not able to safely get an archer or where a police call can participate. But in working with that community, we really want to educate and do the outreach, letting them know that, one person I have a person who does archery next to me and I've got 3 acres. Well, great, maybe you can work out a partnership and there you have someone, managing your small piece of land because we cannot get to all of those subdivisions safely. So, it's really about us really working with the community going forward. And I spend a lot of time on the phone with residents, listening to what they need, what they're seeing, and that's really important. And so we have gotten a lot of messages that where our management is happening, that they're is a noticeable difference, and that's really great. And so keeping, some consistency moving forward, being able to, call and harvest this many deer each year is going to be really important for our stewardship and for our community. And I just really, want to thank Mike Ellis first off. He does so much work behind the scenes that nobody sees. And then our DPW workers who come in and make sure the job gets done. Derek Bob, Dan Inman, Don Cuson, Dedestin Kaufman, and Sergeant McCready, Chief Plaga, and their whole team have just worked a lot of hours to make this program successful. So thank you so much to all of you. We definitely can't do it alone, Jane and I. So now I'm going to let Chad talk a little bit about some of the statistics of the program and just our deer herd in general in the township.
Hi, thanks for having me. So I've been with the DNR for almost 15 years, the last 10 of them in my current position. So I've been working with Jane and Luann and Emma and all the rest of the folks almost the entire time you've had this deer program up and running. And as Jane said, it is kind of a model we try to get other communities to follow as best they can. Not all communities have the resources or the parks and green space available to run a managed hunt. From a DNR perspective, that's usually when it comes to deer management or wildlife management in general. In a lot of cases, we try to steer towards regulated hunting. So if there's available space to have hunters hunt deer during the regular hunting season, that's our preferred method. And the township has done a wonderful job instituting the managed archery program. Works really well. A lot of community support, as you all know. But one thing when we, communities come to us and they say, we got a deer problem, they often want us to say, how many deer do we have and how many should we have? Unfortunately, it's not that easy. Deer population dynamics can be kind of tricky. It's not as easy as just removing some deer and then you solve the problem. It's kind of a long-term effort. With the way the population dynamics work, deer are what we call a density-dependent species. So how much they reproduce depends on how dense their population is. So if you lower the population, they actually start reproducing more. So you can have a lot of, it's tricky to balance that. And we have a tricky time even outside of municipalities and suburban areas in our general, generally across the state, our population levels, we don't even manage at a number specifically anymore. So by, years ago, we used to manage by, deer per square mile. We wanted a certain number of deer per square mile in each county. We got away from that quite a long time ago. So what we do now is we manage more of the impacts deer have. So are they having, you've seen a lot of car deer accidents, or you've seen a lot of crop damage, a lot of environmental damage, complaints from residents, disease outbreaks. And so we try to manage deer populations on those, on a scale, not as a number so much but as trends. So are deer populations going up? Are they going down? Are they steady over time? And what impacts are we seeing in a particular area? So Meridian Township in particular, we're kind of managing for those impacts. So as you stated, the car deer accidents, some of the impacts on the parks and green spaces, complaints from residents. Those are some key metrics to measure over time and have been doing for 11 years now. So to pinpoint a specific number on how many deer you have or should have, it's not that easy. I mean, you could do all kinds of surveys, and some surveys are more accurate than others. But whether your survey tells you have 1,000 deer or 10,000 deer is kind of irrelevant. If you're not having complaints, you're not having issues, 10,000 deer might not be too many deer, but maybe 1,000 deer is if you're having a lot of complaints and a lot of issues. So that's kind of what we've tried to move away from a specific number, but more managing those impacts. And I think, in my mind, the township's been pretty receptive in trying to push that message a little bit more with their stakeholders and the residents that they interact with a lot. So so right now, the program's been successful. The deer, the police call has been instituted the last couple of years and seems to be successful in those pockets of areas where they're doing management. But obviously now we have more of a deer distribution problem. You can remove deer in one area, but if you're having complaints over here and you're not able to safely remove them, then we got to try to figure out a way to kind of manage some of those problems. And we can probably try to pull some different levers and work with the community to try to figure out some of those issues moving forward. But the program's been in existence for quite a long time now. It's been really successful. It's just one of those things you got to kind of learn and adapt as we're going and try to change some of the tactics if needed. So I think that's all I've got at this moment. I can take questions later. Or...
Yeah. Thank you,
Good.
Chad.
Sure.
Thank you for always being here. Next, I asked Chief Plaga to say something too, because again, the police call was one of the tools that we started using last year as our deer management. And we're just really appreciative to the police department for all of their hard work too. You're welcome.
Board members, good evening. So one of the things that's important about this call is we identified early on during the chronic wasting disease is that when the U.S. Department of Agriculture, which was hired by the state DNR to come in and manage the deer population, we saw a drastic reduction in car deer crashes. Well, that problem was addressed. They stopped culling deer and testing deer. The population went back up. Our car deer crashes went back up. Over the last 2 years, we've seen a significant reduction in car deer accidents. We've gotten quite a few calls from, I'm not too worried about bushes getting browsed on. That's really not my bailiwick. But I am worried about people getting in accidents and getting injured and property damage. So we upped it. Last year we did 150 deer, and we upped it by 50. I think, talking with Chad and working with the experts, I think we have to make a sustained effort in this program to make sure that we can keep those car deer accidents down. Because in our experience from the USDA, they stopped culling, accidents went back up. So we want to sustain that population at a lower level. All of our officers volunteered to do this. They did do it on duty time, but no overtime. So we manipulated shifts to make sure that we had officers to properly cover the road, and officers would come in and flex their days to do the call. And we were able, it was 18 evenings. We took 200 deer, we called 200 deer in only 18 evenings. Now, I'm sorry to Mike Ellis, because there were a few times when he would come in and they would have quite a few deer that they had to take care of and manage in the morning. But the officers enjoyed doing the work because it kind of takes them out of their day. And I wanted to recognize them: Ian Mandernack, Doug Strauss, Blaine Anderson, Adam Slavic, and Megan Heineman. So those were the officers. And then Sergeant McCready and Sergeant Clements were the two sergeants that kind of coordinated the program. The nice thing about it, Jane talked about costs, and there were some startup costs, but the equipment that we now have, that's something that is going to be good over time. And it doubles as some equipment we can use in law enforcement as well: thermal imaging cameras, night vision equipment. So that provides us, if somebody gets lost or if there's somebody in the lake that we're looking for, that equipment helps us in that aspect as well. So not just deer call, it's something we can use year round. So.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for us while we're here? Thank you for letting us all come tonight.
Thank you for coming. Clerk Guthrie.
Thank you. Thank you all for your effort in this. I'm with the chief. I'm not too concerned about the bushes, more so the accidents in the community. Some of what you presented did answer some of my questions, but could you explain when the deer are culled and you can you explain what it is that you do, Mike, with the processing of the deer? I'm not a hunter. I like all the deer in my backyard, so I don't tell anyone that they're there. I don't feed them either, but
There you go. I appreciate it. Once the officers dispatch the deer, they're brought back to our service center. They're placed out back. We have a crew of guys: Destin Kaufman, Don Poussin, Dan Inman, Derek Bob, and myself. We'll come in at 4:30 or 5 in the morning. We have to field dress the deer. Once we get them all field dressed and taken care of, we load them in a truck. I take them down to the beef barn. We drop them off there, and then once a week we pick up from there. And they grind, excuse me, they grind everything into 1 pound packages, and I distribute them to the food banks from there. So
I don't know what field dressing means.
removing the insides of the deer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's the not so glamorous part of the job.
Wow, this is like a,
Yeah.
man, thank you.
Yes, so, I just wanted to say that we helped a lot of needy people this year. At, over 7,000 pounds, these food banks were really appreciative of everything we did. A lot of them told me the same thing. They couldn't get their hands on meat products and stuff like that. So they were doing a lot of non-perishable stuffs to these places. And I had food banks that were actually, they would deliver to people's houses and stuff. So,
wow.
I mean, we're doing a really good thing.
Do you coordinate with the food banks, or is that a group
I do.
effort? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And do you do both male and female deer, or?
Well, we had a mix of males and females.
Okay.
I mean,
Our tags are for does, and
Okay.
then they are allowed to harvest the bucks using their own tags. We have all kinds of rules, and it's, as we always say, this is a very highly managed program.
Yes.
So there's a lot of rules. Like if you really read into the report here, you'll see that the police call donated a lot more venison than our hunters. That's because we only require them to donate their first deer they harvest, and then after that they can keep them for themselves, or a lot of people just do private donations. That happens a lot. And we're happy just that a deer was removed and that someone was fed. So it's very appreciated. And like any job, it's all about the relationships, isn't it? And Mike built that with these. I mean, we started out with just Okemos and Hazlitt community food banks, and he's now up to 14
Wow.
food banks. And these are places that are only open Tuesdays and Thursdays from these hours to these hours. And so it's just been a really positive feeling, I think, to know how many hungry people we're feeding through this program. And really appreciative to the police call for really getting that venison number up, and mostly appreciative to Michigan Sportsmen Against Hunger, who pays for this processing, and their money comes from when you buy a deer license or a fishing license or anything, you can check to add $1 to that to go to Michigan Sportsmen Against Hunger. So that's what's paying for all of this processing, and what a great program that is. The board, we did have a resolution last year to honor them, and we'll be sure to send them the board's thank yous this year again, because we couldn't do it without all of these partners. So it's a lot of people, but I think that, as we can see, just putting a little bit more funding and some creativity and some more money toward this really helps it be a lot more effective. So that's been a great thing. So thank you for letting us speak tonight.
Trustee Wadzinski.
I want to thank everybody too. 302 deer is a lot of deer. I come from a family of hunters. I'm now vegetarian, but just kidding. I did want to meet. I'm not kidding, but that's not why. I did want to mention that people used to say to me like, Courtney, well, you eat venison? How can you eat venison? And I think, how can you eat slaughtered meat, right? Like, so I wanted to just make the point that there was 7,000 pounds of healthy meat. So no preservatives, no chemicals. And so I just want to make that point. That's really, you're giving people healthy alternatives.
7,400 pounds.
7,400.
Yeah, so, I mean,
Local and sustainable.
Local and sustainable. So I think
Yes.
those are really important as
For
well.
sure.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Treasurer DeShane.
I have a question for Chad regarding the number of deer we have. I've heard a number from 1,200 to 10,000 deer in our township. Do we have anything but a wild guess as to that number?
Short answer, no. I believe back when we discovered chronic wasting disease in 2015, I think the township was working with Michigan State. They were doing some studies. They're doing what they call pellet counts. They're counting deer pellets, which is their feces. And there's models that can predict, how many deer you have in it. I think that estimate conservatively was like 65 deer per square mile or something like that. So, and you can, for a pretty conservative estimate that I don't know, that was 7 years ago now, you could multiply however many square miles are in the township by 65 and maybe get you in the ballpark, but I hesitate to put a lot of faith in a number specifically like that. So, yeah, without doing some pretty systematic surveys over time, it's hard to pinpoint. Even when you do those surveys, there's a lot of inaccuracies in them. It's just hard to count wildlife. I mean, they don't stand still. You can't see all of them. Even if you fly over the top of them in a helicopter or an airplane, you think you'd be able to count them all, but you can't. And it's a tough thing to do.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
We did get a letter from a resident this week, the board did, complimenting us for the deer program, but telling us to keep doing it and do more of it if we can. I think there are certain areas in the township, if you don't have a park or a natural reserve next to your neighborhood, you, like mine, Cornell Woods, you have a lot of deer today. I looked out my backyard last night, I counted 14, and they move all through, and my neighborhood in Forest Hills and the Shoals and Briarwood and Tacoma Hills, all those areas that don't have those things that allow the hunting to take place, those neighborhoods still have a significant deer problem.
And that's exactly what we're hearing too. Cornell Woods, Briarwood, Forest Hills, Shoals. And like we always say, the deer like it for the same reason we do. They have the woods at their back, the river to travel on, and an easy passageway to get to people's hostas and ewes. And now that we have Emma Campbell, we're putting even more effort into stewardship and education of native plants. And I live in Okemos too, and the deer don't eat my plants. And Emma lives next to Wildemar, and the deer don't eat her plants because we just don't plant yews or hostas. So there's a lot that we can be doing, and I think always being more creative, like Chad said, getting maybe 6 properties together or larger properties together where they can go in on allowing an archer to come in. We do things like send letters to large property owners and try all these other things, but we're always trying to come up with creative ideas. So if anyone thinks of anything, we're all ears. But yeah, it's back to what Chad said about the deer count. It almost doesn't matter. It's like the conflicts. Like, where are we getting those conflicts? How are we helping people in Cornell Woods or the Shoals? And that's what we have to kind of focus on too.
At the same time, congratulations on a very successful year and a great program and a great contribution to our food banks. That's all by itself so remarkable and worthy of every dollar we spent on this. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you for the summary. And I would note that if anyone is particularly interested in the specifics, there's a very nice map in your report that shows a correlation between accidents and culled deer from this year's program. So thank you all very much for bringing your report to us and for conducting this program.
Thank you.
Item 4B on the presentation is our Township Manager's Quarterly Report. Mr. Walsh?
Thank you very much. What you just heard is a great example of collaboration between departments and the state of Michigan. Mr. Stewart, if you hear about talking about deer throughout the entire state, he is the spokesperson for the entire state from the DNR, and we have him right here in Meridian Township. So, and I can't say enough about the police department's involvement in that program. They really helped bridge it together and take it to new heights in the last couple of years. Just providing you an update, a quarterly update on what's going on within the internal processes at the township. First of all, in the assessing department, we're fully staffed. Right now, the board of review is going on as we speak in the administrative conference room. Thankfully, a lower turnout this year. Only about 25 residents signed up to meet with the Board of Review. And currently, our director, Ashley Winstead, as you remember, has to go through the Level 4 program for the state to become a master assessor. She reported yesterday that approximately 23 people started the program. There's 14 left at this point, and she's one of the 14 and is at about a 98% in her work that she's done through the program. She's doing a terrific job, and she's been a great asset so far to the assessing department. The communications department, fully staffed. I want to first of all thank Brandy Yates, our communications manager. She started 12 years ago today with the township, and Clerk Guthrie has a lot to do with not only her being here, but her success in that department. She's also overseeing the upgrades here to the town hall. You'll see the Prime Meridian magazine coming out here in the next few weeks. And she's doing a lot of work with the Build Back Better wetlands and getting that word out and making sure people are aware of the efforts of the Environmental Commission, Trustee Wazinski and the group on improving and enhancing our wetlands in the township. Community development and economic development fully staffed for the first time in a long time as of 2 weeks ago. Right now we have the demo going on at Trader Joe's and the Hypershine car wash at the former Paul Revere. Nothing But Cakes coming in at the corner of Okemos and Grand River. Buddy's Pizza opening soon, I think on April 4th. The Sparrow development down on Jolly. And we've now hit a $2 billion tax base. That's really significant. That puts Meridian Township, and I see Mr. Helzer shaking his head because he gets around in the state. It's really significant. I mean, that puts Meridian Township in a place up with communities like Midland and Portage over by Kalamazoo, which are really well sought after, really admired communities in Michigan, and that puts us up in that area. In fact, if you combine the tax base of the city of East Lansing and Delhi Township together, it doesn't equal $2 billion, to give you some kind of indication of how significant that is, and that is the investment that people put into Meridian Township. Director Smith's working on the site ordinance. Director Clark is working with Pine Village, or the village of Okemos. And Director Clark just did a tremendous job this month with Women's Business Month, highlighting women-owned businesses in Meridian Township. I saw something just the other day with down with Becky Bouchane down in the south part of the township. The finance department, fully staffed, is right now working on the audit for 2021 and just received again the award of the Excellence in Finance from the Government Accounting or Financial Standards, GOFA. Again, so correct. Kudos to Director Madison and her work on that. The fire department, fully staffed. That's really significant because remember, you've got to be a paramedic to be in our department. That's a very difficult accreditation to obtain, and we are now fully staffed at 34. We had 30 firefighter paramedics just 9 years ago. That was bumped up to 32 with the millage. And the board, through the work of former trustee Opsimer, a year ago, the board asked that be increased to 34. And we've actually have 34 full-time paramedic and firefighters now. So that's quite an accomplishment for Chief Hamill and the department. We also have an emergency operations plan that's being developed. We have a new ambulance, a new fire pumper, and a new ladder truck, and a new command staff vehicle, all ordered. And what's the other common denominator about all those, most importantly?
Paid for.
Paid for, and thank you, Supervisor, paid for in cash. They'll arrive at different times. We expect a ladder truck yet this year, but we're still a year and a half out on the pumper. The Human Resource Department, again, fully staffed under the Director Tehoff. We're working on rewriting the personnel policies. The handbook was last updated in 2015. She's done a phenomenal job of handling COVID and all the nuances that occur with that. Just really, if you think about 160 employees and the way she's managed through that, and the DEI program, she's also carrying that forward. The IT department, lots of stuff going on with IT. The main thing is the $500,000 commitment that the board has made to enhancing our infrastructure, IT infrastructure. You know, the staff we have at the department is tremendous. Our infrastructure is not, and the director will tell you that. We're working with Brightline out of Brighton to update our IT infrastructure, and that report will be here any day now, and we'll share that with you once we get it. I'm not an IT expert by far, but I understand the two main objectives right away will be this the replacement of the switches and the firewall, and those are two big projects. The switches, a relatively easy process. The firewall, a long and will timely process, but hopefully by the end of 2022, our infrastructure here for our IT will be greatly enhanced. The Parks and Rec just celebrated 25 years with the Harris Nature Center. We have an event coming up on April 16th, the Flashlight Easter Egg Hunt at the Nancy Moore Park, where you can come out in the evening and bring your kids, and there will be 15,000 eggs filled with candy. The marketplace is just doing tremendous. Love a Park Day is coming up, and Celebrate Meridian is coming back. June 25th, you'll have a Celebrate Meridian. It'll be great. It won't be enormous. It won't be all the food trucks that Clerk Guthrie was involved with maybe 4 years ago, but we'll have a significant Celebrate Meridian. Public Works, under the direction of our assistant manager, Opsummer, lots of stuff going on. The replacement of the roof at the Okemos Library, the solar project bids are due Friday. Community signage, where we've made more progress in community signage in the last 5 weeks than we've made probably in a year and a half. The MSU to Lake Lansing pathway, the Daniels Drain, the local roads, the Okemos Road Bridge, and of course we all know that the Grand River Avenue project is getting underway, and you're going to hear more about that later tonight. That's about a 5-6 minute overview of what's happened in the last 3 months. Be happy to answer. I'm not going to belabor that because you all get timely reports from our team, so you know what's going on with the township. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Clerk Guthrie.
Thank you, Supervisor Jackson. Manager Walsh, I've received a number of phone calls in my office regarding newspaper reports on the amount of money being spent in downtown Okemos. I wondered if you could give a brief update on that project and what the money really is involved in that.
Yeah, that's a great question. And in fact, Madam Clerk, that was brought up last night at the Planning Commission meeting about how the township could do better in their communication on this project. And I would agree with Commissioner Primo. We can and we will. When people give you constructive criticism, sometimes it's good just to sit back and listen, take it in, and do something well about it. So here's the whole thing in a nutshell. I'll give you an example. There's a lot of infrastructure that needs to be done, water, sewer, and streets around the Village of Okemos property. And we're going to have to do that in the next 3 to 5 years. And we're going to do that at the cost of all the taxpayers, right? Just like any other water, sewer, and road infrastructures. All of us pay for that, right? What you're hearing is a commitment of dollars. Right now it's $1.2 million that's before you, and then there's other ancillary items, projects outside of the development of the project. Let me be very clear. We are not going to invest in the developer's project with brick and mortar. We are not going to invest public funds in the brick and mortar on this development. We're not going to do that. Now, some communities do. Some communities that are that don't have a $2 billion tax base, and they're trying to claw their way up, we're near the top of the hill. We're not trying to climb the hill here in Meridian Township. We don't have to do risky things. And this is not risky. What this is saying, we'll front the money for things that we're going to have to pay for anyway. If you build this, and if you build this, we will capture the future taxes, which we aren't going to have if they don't build. If they don't build, that infrastructure improvements, that 1.2 is on us. If we fund that, and they build this development, the taxes that come out of there through a tax increment financing get reimbursed to the township. So instead of the taxpayers paying for the infrastructure surrounding this, which is our responsibility, the new building and the taxes off that pay for it. It's a great deal for the taxpayers. We have to do it. We are not investing public funds in their development. So there's more on that to come, and we'll do a better job of explaining it as we go forward. But people really need to know the dollars that are being used to support maybe things like burying power lines and putting in water and sewer and infrastructure. They're things that a developer normally would have done anyway. Around the site, they wouldn't have to invest in that. But we're going to put the funds in there and get reimbursed from the development. So it'll be a great deal for the township. We'll have new taxes, new people living in the community, and we'll get stuff paid for that we would normally have to pay for ourselves.
The only other thank you for that. The only other thing I wanted to say was congratulations to the finance team on getting that award once again. And then just thank you to the staff and all of their hard work that they put in. It's really appreciated.
Thank you. And one other thing I wanted to share with you, something else we're working on. I sent an email to the staff about 2 weeks ago. I think the title of it was People, Projects, and Compassion, if I recall. One of the things we're working on is I'm very concerned. You know, we have a lot of people who work very hard and don't make a lot of money for the township. We have people that are, you know, in the $40,000 range, $50,000 range that are working really hard and making great commitments to the township. I'm looking at 8% inflation that people are up against when they go to the gas pumps, when they go to the grocery stores, and mental health, and all that combined. We're working on a plan, and involved in that is Director T. Hoff and Assistant Manager Ops Summer. We're working on putting together a plan. We're in the final stages of that. We're holding listening sessions right now with all of our teams. We held 3 of them today, 1 yesterday. And one of the things we're looking at is a comprehensive, instead of a $1,000 retention payment in December, which doesn't do you any good right now at the grocery store, we're looking at a comprehensive plan for what we might be able to do globally for every employee, and it will be a tiered system. So the people that are making $50,000 or less will see a one-time percentage payment to try to offset some of the COLA, and it'll escalate up to, if you're making more, let's say it's 5 or 6% for people that are under 50,000, and it gets tiered up with a reduction in percentage. So if you're making $100,000, you only see a 1 or 2% increase instead of the 6 at the lower end. So it's tiered. I'm the only one who will not participate in that program because I'm crafting it. And so I wanted to bring that to your attention this evening, that is ongoing. Also note that because of our growth in population and the census numbers are way ahead of the revenue sharing that gets caught up by the state, and the state reimburses the community. Well, Meridian Township, again, $2 billion tax base, and we had a very successful 10 years of growth. 11% over 10 years. Not huge growth. I would call it smart growth, 1% a year. But a lot of communities went backwards on population. Well, the state owes us now for all of our back revenue sharing going back to a year ago. It's a significant number and will more than pay for the program that we're looking at doing. But as communities continue to try to build sidewalks and projects and invest in all this infrastructure and build, I think we need to take a step back and look at the people who are making that possible, the people who are investing, let's invest in our own project. It's called our team. And let's take a look at where we are versus inflation. I wanted to share that with you, a little sneak peek tonight to let you know that we're working on this. It's going to take us probably another 3 to 4 weeks before we bring something to you. So that's all I have, unless there are any questions.
Other questions?
Thank you very
Mr.
much for
Walsh.
your attention.
We now come to item 5, where citizens address agenda items and non-agenda items. I don't have any green slips tonight. If there are members of the public who would like to speak to the board at this time, would you come to the podium? Seeing none, then we'll move on. Mr. Walsh, item 6, Township Manager's Report. We will consider ourselves having received that already. Item 7 is board member reports of activities and announcements. Mr. DeShane.
Just a quick one. With Trustee Sunland, I attended the Economic Development Corporation meeting and Supervisor Jackson as well. I attended the EDC meeting on March 3rd. And then on March 7th was the Downtown Development Authority meeting, which I attended as well. Both were very much focused on the village of Okemos and other new development projects in our PICA area. So both of those were exciting meetings. And tomorrow, the CATA Board of Directors will be meeting at 4 p.m. at the old Sears store in Frandor. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Witzinski.
I'll be quick as well. Environmental Commission, on our last meeting, we appointed a new chair and vice chair. So our new chair is Mr. Bill McConnell. I always want to say McDonald because it's the Park Commission. And Vice Chair Kendra Garcetti. They are also, Emma's doing a tremendous amount of work around the wetland work, but also building back the buffer and including native plant sales. So partnering with the Harris Nature Center, they're doing a native planting educational session. However, I guess it sold out within a few days. So they are going to record it so that we can view it as a community if wanted. And then a native plant sale at the Harris Nature Center in May. So starting to think about, removing your hostas and putting in butterfly bush. I don't even know if that's native, but Emma's our expert. In addition, the green grants have been decided by the commission, and a draft letter has been composed to send to the grantees. We had 4 applicants, and the combined total of the proposals were a bit over the $10,000 allotted dollars. So what we did was looked at the each individual applicant and modified the amount according to the project they were working on. So those will be coming out. I don't want to mention those yet until we get full commitment. I attended my first Land Preservation Advisory Board meeting, and so I don't have too many updates. I was just learning and new there, so I'll keep people updated. Groundwater Management Board and Election Commission haven't met since last meeting.
Thank you. Others? Clerk Guthrie?
I'll be real quick as well. Thank you. Attended the Rotary meeting today, and our resident Cecilia Kramer gave an excellent presentation about the food pantries that are located in the township. She gave an extensive review of what it takes to coordinate those food pantries, taking the donations in, having people come and get them, monitoring them, making sure that they're still full. And if anyone is interested, she does coordinate that through Faith Lutheran Church, and so you can reach out to her through that. There's one at the Hazlitt Library, the Okemos Library. There's 2 at Faith Lutheran. She knows where all of them are in the area. There's one at St. Luke Church. There's one at the Winslow Trailer Park, and then she knows where some of them are around the region too. So she's just this vast wealth of knowledge in regards to that. So I really appreciated hearing her presentation today. And the other quick announcement is that Meridian Cares has their Keep Our Bellies Full, their second fundraiser, which is today, Tuesday, March 15th. It goes until 9 p.m. So if this meeting gets done early, we can head over there for this double cheeseburger and root beer on this picture here, I guess. What are those, like cheese fries things? Those look good. Anyways, so, if you purchase something from Culver's tonight through 9 o'clock and show them this, then a portion of those proceeds go to Meridian Cares. That's what's happening today.
All right. Anyone else? All right, so we now move to item 8. Looking for a motion to approve our agenda.
So moved.
Support.
Been moved and supported to approve the agenda as written. All in favor of the motion, please say yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Opposed, no. Chair votes yes, and an unanimous vote to approve. We move now to our consent agenda. The consent agenda contains communications, minutes of the March 1, 2022 regular meeting and the March 8, 2022 special meeting, plus the bills. Treasurer DeShane.
I move approval of the consent agenda as presented to the board.
I'll support.
It's been moved and supported to approve the consent agenda. We need a roll call vote to approve that motion.
Yes.
Treasurer DeShane?
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski?
Yes.
Trustee Sundman?
Yes.
Supervisor Jackson?
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0.
Thank you. Item 10 is questions for the attorney. We have none. Item 11 is hearings. We have none on our agenda tonight. It brings us to item 12. There are 8 items. The first is the Daniels Drain, Public Drain Improvement SAD. Number 21, Resolutions 3 and 4. Mr. Opsimer will bring us up to date on that project.
Yes, good evening, board members and Supervisor Jackson. Is that television showing the map of the drain district?
No.
Below.
Thank you for the assist on that, Director Schmidt. I need to find a time for Director Geebies
Now
to
we
show
see
me
your-
the entire
we see your
podium.
keyboard now.
Yep. All right. Thank you, sirs. Appreciate it. So this is the actual map of the Daniels Drain District. I'm just going to walk you through the history of this. It obviously dates back to 2015, so it predates every board member's time on the Township Board. So the Daniels Drain is a Chapter 20 drain, which is unique for several reasons that I'll touch on in a moment. The Daniels Drain itself primarily serves all or some portions of the following neighborhoods: Chief Okemos, Navajo Ridge, Forest Hills, East and West Ponds, Cornell Woods North, Whispering Oaks, and Cornell Woods. So it is a rather substantive size for a drain district. In 2015, the Board of Directors of the Ponds Cooperative Homes, Inc. formally requested that the township submit a petition under Chapter 20 of the Drain Code to the Ingham County Drain Commissioner to begin the process of improving and enhancing the drain. The main concern at that time was the garden level condos within the Ponds Cooperative were experiencing flooding. They have, since that time in 2015, experienced further flooding. Obviously, last summer when we had the heavy rains, the one in question with about 8 inches of rain in a very short period of time, the units experienced flooding, and their insurance carrier at that time did not cover those because the corrective action, improvements to the drain, had not taken place yet. So I believe some of the earlier instances in which the flooding occurred, they did receive coverage under their insurance. So at this point, at that point, after the Township Board held some public meetings and ultimately did petition the Drain Commissioner, the Commissioner commenced developing plans to implement the necessary improvements to the Daniels Drain, and of course now has started construction. For anybody that has driven by, you can see that construction is ongoing. So as a Chapter 20 drain, it's maintained by the County Drain Commissioner, and the assessment falls on 3 public entities: ourselves, Ingham County Road Department, and MDOT, the largest of which falls on the township in terms of benefit derived from the drain itself. So Chapter 20 drains are unique. Most drains in the township are Chapter 3 or 4 drains. So the assessment role would be set by the Drain Commissioner. Tracing back the policy intent for a Chapter 20 drain is difficult. Our best guess when we try to glean what the intent of the state legislature was in creating a Chapter 20 drain, that it was preemptive. It was a way for townships to improve the drain system or the drain district in anticipation or to allure development. That's our best guess. So therefore, if it was something where the townships were looking to make drain enhancements, it made sense for the assessment to fall on the township. With Chapter 3 and Chapter 4 drains, the assessment roll setting occurs through the county drain office. So this is the first one that we've had in some time, although we do have 6 other Chapter 20 drains. And through this process, we have begun to identify those and to bring forward conversions. So we're going to begin the process of converting those other drains to Chapter 3 and 4 drains. So you can watch for that to come in the future. So bids were opened and approved, resulting in the actual cost estimate for the project, which is $6.7 million. The township's percentage of 81.44% comes to just over $5.5 million. And so what have we done up to this point? The Township Board did consider back in September what portion of the drain assessment it would pay. And at that time, we determined that we would pay 50% of our 81.44% share of the project. That is significant for several reasons, most of which it's the highest percentage of any drain district we have ever paid as a percentage of the overall project. The closest would be the Tower Gardens drain project. So when you drive through the Tower Gardens neighborhood, north of Lake Lansing, that drain improvement, which was done about a decade ago now, we paid, I think, 32 to 35% of that overall drain improvement. Typically, we pay anywhere from 15 to 33% on a drain project. And so that was the action taken by the board on Resolution 1, and that was just determining the cost that we would contribute, or the percentage of the overall assessment that doesn't fall on MDOT and the county road department that we would pay. And then Resolution 2 in the 5 resolution process was to set the first prospective assessment roll. So it's prospective at that point, and then we set a public hearing under Resolution 2 as well, which the board did hold that public hearing. And at that time, residents were able to come forward and bring complaints or issues to the board and to staff. And so since that public hearing, staff have conducted about 40 meetings with individual property owners within the drain district, and then modifications have been made to the assessment roll. So tonight, what's before you is Resolutions 3 and 4. And so we are essentially updating based on all those meetings and all that input from residents. We have updated the assessment roll, and that new assessment roll is in your packet. And we are setting the second public hearing date, at which point we will get more input from residents and hold more one-on-one meetings before we go to Resolution 5, which is actually adopting the permanent assessment roll, and at which point it would go on the summer tax bills. So those are the 2 resolutions before you. The public hearing would be scheduled for April 12th. We do notice every single resident within the drain district, and legally we are required to issue those notices to them no later than 10 days before the public hearing. So we've already started the process of preparing those, and those will be going out shortly, as well as public notices in the town courier. Happy to entertain and answer any questions that board members have this evening.
All right. Can we first get a motion on the floor, on the table? Trustee Wazinski.
Yes, ma'am. Would you like both or just one?
Let's do them one at a time.
Okay. So first motion is to move to approve Daniel Drain Public Drain Improvement Special Assessment District number 21, Resolution number 3, which approves the Special Assessment District and defraying cost thereof by special assessment against the property specifically benefited thereby, and approves the Special Assessment District estimate and cost of the amount of $2,768,322 and determines the Special Assessment District.
Support.
Clerk Guthrie supports. Are there questions, or is there further discussion? Trustee Wazinski.
For Assistant Manager Opsmer, so I heard you say that you're having another public meeting. Have you made any changes to the original, and was that what was that based on?
Yep, so I didn't have time to put the changes into the memorandum because they were still in flux at the time of just before putting it in the packet. So I'll walk through them verbally, and I can even zoom in a few areas on the map. Largely, they were legal changes, but first I'll just start talking about a few parcels on Dobie Road. So there are a few parcels located on Dobie Road, and it was brought to our attention by the property owners who own those parcels that they do not have culverts under their driveway, meaning that they have no drain infrastructure on the part of their property that fronts on Dobie Road. And so generally speaking, they were in this vicinity. I don't have the list of parcel numbers with me, but Spicer Group, I think, probably knows them directly offhand. So what we did with those parcels, their front yards grade, meaning the slope, and the topography of the yards grade towards the ditch. The ditch does not have any drain infrastructure in it. Therefore, we've taken the acreage that drains toward the ditch that has no drain infrastructure off the assessment roll. So we did a specific scientific calculation on their parcels, unique to the topography, and adjusted accordingly. Unfortunately, because of how a Chapter 20 drain works, we are not legally able to remove homes from the drain district. That would be the county drain office, and I'm not certain what the legal process would actually be for that. Their rear yards do drain in. You can see that they're pretty deep parcels, right? They're narrow, deep parcels. Their rear yards do drain into the district, right? So they have runoff factor going into the drain district, and then that stormwater gets managed by the drain to the east, right? The other changes were very technical in nature, so public parcels cannot be assessed. There is a very small portion of Cornell Elementary that is in the drain district. It is not the entire, where did it go? So this map actually needs to be adjusted because this map is not quite accurate. This must be showing all the parcels. But roughly this corner here, the northwest corner, is in the drain district. And so the acreage that was comprised from Cornell Elementary's parcel was on the assessment roll originally, and it should not be as a public entity. And then the township actually has parkland in the drain district that should not be on the assessment roll, unique to that parcel. So, and forgive me because I have not worked this laptop before.
One follow-up.
And then the
Question.
last thing was 2 public lift stations. So the Department of Public Works does have 2 lift stations within the drain district, and those are located on private residential parcels. We calculated the actual easement for the lift stations and removed that acreage from those 2 parcels so that those 2 unique property owners are not essentially paying for acreage that is impervious, and it's our infrastructure.
Okay. One follow-up question that's very helpful. We've seen, as board members have seen, people having concerns about their particular parcels. You mentioned that you not only have public meetings, but you individually meet with private individuals if needed.
Yeah, and so the most frequent thing that came up during the individual meetings was the acreage. And so that's the final fundamental change that's occurred to the assessment roll. Originally, we used GIS software to determine the acreage, which is probably the most accurate. However, when people have their records from the assessor's office, that also lists an acreage, and there's probably a lot of human error involved in the actual assessment or the acreage that goes on that record. But nevertheless, we converted all the acreage from the GIS model of mapping acreage to using the assessor's records. That was a pretty common complaint. Because of how Chapter 20 drain works, there are always going to be winners and losers when there's a change to the proposed assessment roll, right? We don't have a final roll before us, but when you convert the acreage from GIS to that, there's going to be people that have their acreage go up and some have their acreage go down. But that was a pretty prevailing thing that residents brought to us was their acreage being slightly different.
Excellent, thank you, that's helpful.
On the whole, very small changes on a percentage basis.
Clerk Guthrie.
Thank you, Supervisor Jackson. I have a follow-up question to those homes on Dobie. I'm very familiar with them because my grandpa built 4554 Dobie. So even though those homes are closer to Dobie than they are to the homes in the back, there's still less drainage that causes a reduction in the assessment on those homes. I'm just trying to understand, because to me it's, when I look at them, in my mind, I'm thinking there's more drainage because I know how much there is in the back of those houses compared to the front.
So let's just go in and we're going to use, of course, whenever I hit the zoom, it completely throws the map off. So let's just use parcel 4544 here as an example. So the home is roughly right here. The ditch is here adjacent to Dobie Road. The topography is grading down this way towards the ditch in the front yard. The topography in the backyard is grading this way into the drain district. Here in their ditch, they do not have culverts connecting. So essentially their stormwater runoff from that front yard goes into the ditch, and it's managed there and it's detained there until it filtrates down and becomes groundwater, right? So because they're not getting any benefit, the whole point of the assessment rule is to calculate it based on benefit derived. And there's a number of factors that we utilize with that, including proximity to the pond, the detention pond adjacent to the cooperative. But one of them is acreage and impervious to pervious ratio, right? And so in this case, they're actually managing all their stormwater from their front yard on site. So we took that acreage off the assessment roll, but we kept the acreage roughly from the rear of the home where the grade starts to drain into the drain district, because they have stormwater runoff that's coming in and being managed through the drain system inside the Forest Hills neighborhood. So that was the process that we went through for those parcels on Dobie that do not have culverts specifically.
And can you show more of Forest Hills area neighborhood? So for those streets that are not colored green, those are not being assessed, correct?
Correct. And this map doesn't show the drain district. I should correct that. This map shows the parcels that are partially or entirely in the drain district.
Because I had people ask me in those areas, because all those flags are out, if this is part of the Daniels Drain project, and I said, I know that you're not being assessed. You're not in the assessment district.
Yeah, that's a complex question, Clerk Guthrie, because we have a lot of work going on. So this time of year when the thaw is occurring, we get a lot of permits from Consumers Energy, MetroNet, basically all of the utilities, right, private utilities, energy and broadband providers. So there's a lot of work going on in the neighborhood, one of which was residents on Misty Wood, which is located right here in Whispering Oaks, contacted us the other morning. It's Wednesday or Thursday morning, because flags were in their front yards and they were wondering what work was going on. So we inquired with the project engineer for the drain district, and it was not work occurring because of the drain district. We reviewed our permits. We had no approved permits. It was MetroNet conducting work, and we had them come in. They had no permit. We met with them and had them cease and desist their work. So flags within the neighborhood could be for any number of things, but I would encourage everyone, if they're wondering what the flags are for, please contact DPW at meridian.mi.us.
Thank you, because I know a number of people who just assuming it's part of Daniels Drain.
And our DPW employees are in the field often, so we also caught boring that MetroNet conducted on Birchwood, and they put it over our water main. So just for residents' edification, if they see utility providers, it is good to contact the township just so we can double check, because we do require them horizontally to stagger their boring 5 feet off our water main. Otherwise, we have no option. If we have a main break, we're just going to have to cut their fiber. There's no way around it.
Thank you. Those are all my questions.
Okay. Treasurer DeShane.
when we had our public meeting on this issue, we had a lot of pushback against it, people who were opposed to it. And I think the argument that really stood out for me is that for some of our residents in these neighborhoods, and actually my house is right across the street from this area, so I just missed it by a whisker, but most of my neighbors are affected by this. They're not upset about the Daniels drain. They're upset about the fact that this is the second, third, or fourth drain assessment they've gotten. And it seems to make sense. We're a wet township, you're going to likely have a drain assessment, but has there been any talk with the drain commissioner about these multiple drains being assessed on properties, at least in this neighborhood?
Yeah, so I've had a number of meetings with the drain office. I have not broached that subject, and I don't know legally what, I mean, generally speaking, the philosophy is if you have benefit from the drain, even if there's overlapping drains, that you have benefit with, whether it's 2 or 3 drains that overlap, you have benefit derived from all 3. But that's certainly a conversation that I can have and try to glean more information to bring back to the board.
I think most residents would be happy with just one benefit, this way or that way, not this way, that way, that way, that way. Because, the poor gentleman on Birchwood came in and he literally has 4 drain assessments on his tax bill every year. And it's a significant add to his burden, tax burden. So thank you for following up with that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, we did have a public meeting to explore improvements to the Wilkshire drain, which is a Chapter 3 or 4 drain, so it is not a Chapter 20 drain. No work is going to commence on Chapter 20s until we convert them. So we rectify this moving forward and learn from our mistakes, right? But I attended that, as did our chief engineer, Yanis Shrady, and I think it's good for residents to go in eyes wide open on what these assessments really look like, especially today when there's this dearth of infrastructure money, and contractors are going to bid high when there's this much work. They can afford to lose the contract, so they're going to bid it high. That's just the way things are going to go when you have an influx of money like we've never seen before.
Oh, you're finished?
I'm finished.
I'm sorry. So, I have just one question. Once you go about these consultations with the neighbors and you take things off of the assessment, or properties off of the assessment, then you have to recalculate.
Yep.
And so what we're voting on here is a modification of the original assessment roll. And we're just voting to accept these modifications, essentially.
Yes, and they are all prospective, Supervisor Jackson. So this is basically the process goes that you're going to have 2 prospective assessment rolls that the public has time to digest, and they receive direct notification, legally under statute, 10 days before the public hearing, so that they have an opportunity to review the assessment roll and come in, and then we do schedule one-on-one meetings after the public hearing is held. So there's 2 rounds of that, right? We had one in the fall where we put the first prospective assessment roll out, held the public hearing, did one-on-ones, made adjustments to the roll, and we're just going to go back through that exact same process before we finalize it. So it's a way of finding errors, right? We had an error on the first one with 2 publicly owned parcels being on the roll when state law provides that they shall not be, right? It's not even permissive. Just to give context, like the township's park parcel, we ran it, and roughly it equates to $5 more per parcel over the 20 years. So $5 divided by 20 years would be the annual increase. So it's not hugely significant in that manner. The one thing that would be, now that I forget, there's one other change that occurred for the board's edification. Whispering Oaks, which is right here. There's 37 parcels in Whispering Oaks. They do have this open space. It's a PUD. And so with a PUD, we do have open space, which is owned by the HOA. And so we took the 8.5 acres and change that's owned by the HOA and spread it over the 37 parcels within that neighborhood.
All right. If there are no other questions, we have a motion on the table to approve the special assessment district and the costs based on changes, the specific, I think you read all of the specifics in your motion, Trustee Wazinski. And with no further questions, we'll vote on the motion. All in favor of, no, we have to do a roll call vote, I believe. Mr. Lemaster?
Treasurer DeShane,
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski,
Yes.
Trustee Sundlin,
Yes.
Supervisor Jackson,
Yes,
Clerk Guthrie.
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0.
thank you. Now there's a second motion, which relates to resolution number 4 for this SAD. Someone like to read that motion? Trustee Wazinski.
I move to approve Daniels Drain Public Drain Improvement Special Assessment District Number 21, Resolution Number 4, which provides for the special assessment roll to be filed with the Office of the Township Clerk and shall be available for public examination during regular working hours on regular working days. Provides that the Township Board shall meet at 6 p.m. on Tuesday, April 12th, for the purposes of reviewing and hearing objections to the special assessment roll, and directs the Township Clerk to cause notice of such hearing and the filing of the assessment roll.
Support.
Clerk Guthrie supports. Are there any further questions? So this motion sets a hearing date for Tuesday, April the 12th, and causes the clerk to file the special assessment roll. Any further questions or clarifications? Mr. Lemaster?
Trustee Wazinski,
Yes.
Trustee Sundlin,
Yes.
Supervisor Jackson,
Yes,
Clerk Guthrie,
Yes.
Treasurer DeShane.
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0.
thank you. Item 12B, final preliminary plat number 19012, Jaguar Homes, Sanctuary 3. Mr. Schmidt.
Be happy to answer any questions the board might have. Very briefly, this is a 7-lot subdivision that was tentatively approved in 2019. There was a series of litigation that the township was not involved with, but essentially we held the plat in advance until such time as all the legal issues were resolved. That occurred about a month ago. We got the formal submittal. The plat is essentially the same as what you saw before. They now have all the approvals that are necessary under state law to proceed. As part of state law and local law, we have 20 days from receipt to approve the final preliminary plat. The 20th day is today. So we are asking the Township Board to take action on this evening and approve this. Next step in the process, they will put infrastructure in, put road in, get everything ready. And then once they have all of that inspected, approved, installed, they will request final plat approval, which will allow them to then start selling lots in the subdivision. So you will see this one more time as a, however, I will say the final step of a plat is a bit of a rubber stamp process, because by then we'll have seen it multiple times, everything will have been installed, inspected, approved, and so that's sort of the final step in saying, yep, this is a legal lot you can sell.
Okay. Mr. DeShane?
A question and a comment. Question is, since it's been 2.5 years, would this have had to come back to the board anyway, since nothing commenced in the 2 years required since September of 2019?
If they hadn't proceeded with construction, they would have had to at least come back for an extension request, which we would have recommended. However, given the litigation, everything was just kind of paused from our perspective.
And then I also appreciate the last paragraph of the first page where you have staff has identified no concerns with the request and would recommend approval. These things can get complicated, and we appreciate the staff input on this so that we know where staff stands. We may not always agree with staff, but we certainly helps to know what the staff is recommending.
Well, I hope you agree with me most of the time, but we'll at least
So
give you a
far, you're
recommendation,
batting 100%.
whenever we can.
Thank you.
All right. Any other, Mr. DeChene?
I move to approve the resolution for final preliminary plat number 19012, Jaguar Homes, a request to construct Sanctuary 3, a single-family subdivision consisting of 7 lots located east of Hewlett Road, north of Jolly Road, off of Robbins Way.
Support.
Trustee Wazinski supports the motion. And are there any questions? Clerk Guthrie?
Thank you. I only have one question. I was reading the Drain Commissioner's letter, and it was talking about executing the 433, 425 agreements. Can you explain what a 433? I know what a 425 agreement is. Can you explain what a 433 agreement is? It's on the second page.
It's another reference to the same section. It's not a 425 agreement in terms of a land swap. It's an agreement with respect to the modifying the drainage district boundaries in this case.
Okay.
Because they have 2 drainage districts, it actually splits a couple of lots. They need to clarify that.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Treasurer DeShane?
By way of background, 'cause this whole board wasn't here back in 2019. This is a very contentious issue that came before the board. Initially, there were 12 to 15 proposed lots, and then they came to back to 10. And after a lot of work, and the manager was involved with this, extensively working with the neighbors and the developer, we came up with this number of 7, which the residents could agree on, the developer could live with, and it was a well-crafted compromise by all parties, and then nothing happened. So it's good to see it back before us and to see it move forward after all the effort it took to put it together to begin with.
All right, the motion is to approve the resolution for final preliminary plat number 19012. It's been properly moved and seconded. We need a resolution. We need a roll call vote for a resolution.
Trustee Sutherland.
Yes.
Supervisor Jackson.
Yes.
Clerk Guthrie.
Yes.
Treasurer DeShane.
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski.
Yes.
Thank you. Unanimous vote. Mr. Lemaster?
Yes. Motion carried 5-0.
Thank you. All right, now I have to catch up. Item 12C is a special use permit, 22-011, the Meridian Company, for a building, special use permit for a building greater than 25,000 square feet. And we'll hear from Mr. Smith instead of Keith Chapman.
I'm pinch hitting for both of my employees this year.
Oh, good.
Largely, staff has no further comment on this. The board reviewed this at their last meeting and had no major concern. We are happy to recommend approval of this and look forward to getting the M&J management team under construction, hopefully sometime in the near future.
All right. As Mr. Schmidt said, we've seen it many times. I'm sure their assumption is that we are likely to approve it, so can we get a motion? Trustee Wazinski.
Motion to adopt the resolution approving the request from M&J Management LLC to construct a building greater than 25,000 square feet on a vacant property adjacent to their existing building at 1999 M78 Highway. The vacant 5-acre parcel is zoned industrial, I industrial.
Support.
Clerk Guthrie supports the motion. This is the motion to adopt the resolution. Are there any questions, comments, discussions? Trustee Wazinski.
Just like to say, again, thanking the owner for staying in the township and using existing parcels to expand their business, so very excited about that. Just want to make the comment that I made in the last meeting as well, is if there's any possibility to save any of the 30 to 40 quality trees and ensuring that we're not disrupting the wetlands would be my last comment.
Is your hand up?
Yes,
Clerk,
sorry.
Clerk Guthrie, please.
It's not quite as long as Genevieve Feasters, I'm sorry. I too wanted to comment about the wetlands. I appreciate the extensive wetland report that was provided in the previous packet when we had talked about this. And I appreciate the concern for the wetlands and the trees and paying particular attention to protecting the environment on this project. I would say that had a large role in supporting this project moving forward, seeing the attention to detail on the wetlands.
Trustee Wazinski,
Can I ask Director Schmidt a question?
Absolutely.
please.
On any special use permit greater than 25,000, a natural feature study is required, correct?
Natural feature study is required for any special use permit or any MUPUD.
So that's a good thing.
I just felt it was more extensive than other reports I had seen. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. That's just how I felt.
No, they're very thorough. So
I think we're ready to move on then. This is a motion to adopt a resolution. Is Mr. Lemaster prepared for a roll call vote?
Supervisor Jackson.
Yes.
Clerk Guthrie.
Yes.
Treasurer DeShane.
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski.
yes.
Trustee Sundlin.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Item 12D, ordinance 2022-01, fire hydrant hose connection. That's not you, is it?
It is. This is what's known as when you open your mouth, something falls into your lap. I know this is what everyone's here for this evening, so I'll be quick.
Yes, everybody just waiting.
This is the final adoption of the clarification to put into ordinance the township's policy to update the fire hydrant hose connections when work is done on an adjacent non-single-family residential building.
All right.
It has been published pursuant to the board's direction, and we are ready for adoption.
All right. Trustee Sundlin.
Motion to adopt the resolution approving ordinance 2022-01 and ordinance to add fire hydrant hose connection standards in Chapter 26, Fire Prevention and Protection.
Support?
Treasurer DeShane supports the motion. Are there questions, comments, need for, okay. Then we need a roll call vote for this too, I believe.
Clerk Guthrie.
Yes.
Treasurer DeShane.
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski.
Yes.
Trustee Sundlin.
Yes.
Supervisor Jackson.
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0.
Thank you. Item 12E is appointment of new township trustees. So as late as this afternoon, this board has completed its process of interviewing 3 candidates for 2 positions on the township board, two vacant positions on the township board. We're at the we have interviewed 3 candidates, and so we are at a point where we will vote to nominate and elect 2 candidates. The floor is open for nominations. Mr. DeShane.
First of all, I want to say we had 9 citizens apply for these positions, and all 9 were excellent candidates. And it was difficult to narrow that number down to 3 that we interviewed today. And of those three, all three of them were excellent candidates, and any one of the three could serve very well. In fact, any of the 9, I believe, could serve very well in the township board. All brought a lot of experience and skills to the position. 2 candidates really stood out above a field of exceptional candidates that I'm going to nominate here or move to appoint here. The first would be Scott Hendrickson.
Let's take them one at a time.
Okay. The first would be Scott Hendrickson, and I'm moved to appoint Scott Hendrickson as member of the Meridian Township Trustee for a term of March 15th, 2022 to November 20th, 2022.
Support.
And if I can just say briefly about Scott, his engagement is exceptional. He's been the chair of the Planning Commission. He's really been part of the team as chair and very ably led the Planning Commission through some difficult reviews and at times contentious issues before the Planning Commission, and ably led them through that. Knowledgeable. Scott has a strong background in public policy, understands our zoning, our land use ordinances, and will bring a lot of that knowledge to the board, which we are going to miss since Trustee Opsimer stepped down from the board. The other thing that impressed me is that Scott has a really clear vision of how this board needs to work together to keep Meridian a prime community and a community that people continue to want to move to as they have for more than a half century. So for those reasons, I'm proud to nominate Scott Hendrickson for the open trustee position.
And the motion was seconded by Trustee Wazinski. Would you have comments?
Sure, thank you. I would agree with Treasurer that Mr. Hendrickson was an exceptional candidate and, has a lot of knowledge in public service, but has also provided a lot of community service. So working currently as, on the Planning Commission, on the Zoning Board, I sat for a minute with Mr. Hendrickson. His passion for Meridian was exhibited significantly through his interview, and his pride in Meridian was exhibited. I do feel he will help to fill a gap we have on this board, and I'm excited and honored to work with him.
Thank you. Clerk Guthrie?
Thank you. I was very impressed with the interview with Mr. Hendrickson for 2 main reasons. One is his dedication to this community through his public service, his commitment to public service, and the very first thing he talked about was customer service and providing that to the community members. I've been part of this township and in this building for a long time, and I've lived in this community for over 40 years, and the 2 things that you talked about, providing customer service and the fact that you wouldn't live anywhere else, hit me because I completely understand that. And just the heart that you gave in your interview for the care of the community. It's not just about making sure that the ordinances or the master plan or the PICA zones are providing the financial engine, as you called it during your interview, the way in which they're supposed to do, but it's in working together as a community. And us all working together to provide that public service. And then you also talked about a third kind of thing that impressed me as well was the symbiotic relationship between the board and the manager, and making sure that we're working and doing the things that we need to do to support the staff so that we can actually meet all of these lofty goals and provide these services to the community. And so, not only are you incredibly knowledgeable about ordinances and all the time that you've served on these commissions, but the heart that you have to give the community, I think, would serve all of our residents and businesses really well. And so, for that reason, I will be supporting this nomination.
Ms. Sunderland? Trustee Sunderland, would you like to add comments?
Yeah, during Scott's interview, he talked about transparency, more communication. He talked about wetland enforcements, the voice of residents. He does have a younger family, so he talked about partnering with the Meridian Mall more, thinking that that is quite an investment that we need to do. Talked about diversity, equity, inclusion. So yes, I would like to endorse Scott Hendrickson for this nomination also.
All right. And I will go on record as agreeing with all of the comments made by my colleagues. And so the motion to appoint Scott Henderson as Meridian Township Trustee for a term of March 15, 2022 to November 2022 has been made and seconded. All in favor of the motion, please say yes. And do the roll call again? Sorry. Zach?
Treasurer DeShane?
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski?
Yes.
Trustee Sundman?
Yes.
Supervisor Jackson?
Yes.
Clerk Guthrie?
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0.
Thank you. All right, we have a second appointment to make. Clerk Guthrie?
I move to appoint Marna Wilson as Meridian Township Trustee for a term of March 15, 2022 to November 20, 2022.
Support.
Supported by Treasurer DeShane. Clerk Guthrie?
Similar comments in regards to being part of the community that I talked about with Scott, and that Marna has years of dedicated service to this community, years of volunteer service, years of service and knowledge on boards and commissions. She is incredibly humble in the amount of giving that she gives us to this community. And many of her answers were just about the community as a whole and the board working together towards that end, including making sure that we have these PICA zones fixed and doing what we need them to do in regards to bringing in that tax base and working with whatever we can do with the mall and downtown Okemos and Hazlet. And so I just really appreciated not only her comments, but her dedication to the community. And I think that fits with the vision that the board has and that the manager has and that township staff has. And so for that reason, I'm supporting her for this nomination.
Treasurer DeShane.
I agree with the clerk. I think Marna Wilson will make an excellent contribution to this board. She'll work well with this board. I think she'll help us to work together as a board. She has got decades of working on various boards and commissions within the township and outside and other groups to help those groups to work best. She was a board member in the 1990s, and going back in her time, she was actually one of the original board members that put forward the plan to develop the Nokomis Learning Center next door, which is going through a bit of a renaissance right now. They're doing their best to rehabilitate the building and add a whole bunch of programming. That place wouldn't exist without leadership like Marna showed back in the 90s. Marna also really cares about a lot of the issues that this board cares about, especially environmental issues. Back in the 90s, wetlands ordinances were new, and Marna was a key player in helping us to create very strong wetlands ordinances to protect our fragile wetlands. And also part of the early team that put together the urban services boundary that's protected the rural character of the eastern third of the township. We have that today because of the vision of people like Marna Wilson. And lastly, as the clerk mentioned, Marna is passionate about public service. She does it in her free time. She does it day and night. And to have that passion here in the board, brought to the board, I think reflects well the values of our township, because our residents, by and large, are very passionate about public service. And that's why we have excellent boards and commission members. We have many big active service clubs, and we have a lot of volunteer work that's done in this township every day. And Marna will be a great vision and inspiration for those members of our community that already give a lot. When you see someone like Marna, you think, well, I could probably give a little more, because seeing what she's doing is pretty remarkable. So for those reasons, I think Marna's going to make an excellent board member if we vote for her. Marna also identified early on an issue that Trustee Wazinski and others have pointed out. We really have to address the affordable housing issue in Meridian Township. We've got a lot of beautiful, very expensive homes in our township being developed. We don't have much middle housing being developed, and we don't have a lot of truly affordable housing being developed. And we need to find some solutions to that, find some ways forward that can allow for housing to be more affordable for people of median income, not just the high income earners. So I think Marna will help us in that project that the board has identified of helping to create an affordable housing plan for Meridian Township. Thank you.
Trustee Wazinski.
I can also support Ms. Wilson for her, certainly her preparedness, her passionate, all the experiences she's brought to us, everything that the clerk and treasurer have already said. Some of the things that Ms. Wilson shared that stood out to me was she had a phrase that said environmental sustainability should drive the budget, and I thought that was pretty insightful. And I know her focus is more on redevelopment as opposed to urban sprawl. And we know that we're working in our PICA areas, and she was very supportive, had some ideas for maybe improving that process going forward. So I support Ms. Wilson as well.
Trustee Sunderland.
And I also just want to point out that these appointments are for a term of March 15th, 2022 to November 20th, 2022. So correct me if I'm wrong, the clerk. You know, that this is going to have to go through an election process. So, you know, I just wanted to point that out too.
And I would only add that one of my interests and concerns was how the applicants and the appointees would meld and work with this board. One of the particular features of Ms. Wilson's interview was that she was very enthusiastic, or she's very enthusiastically endorsed the goals and directions and that this board is already working with. And so I think that her appointment will be very good for all of us. So the motion is to appoint Marna Wilson as trustee. We need a roll call vote again.
Trustee Wazinski,
Yes.
Trustee Sunderland,
Yes.
Supervisor Jackson,
Yes.
Clerk Guthrie,
Yes.
Treasurer DeShane.
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0.
And we will close this item by congratulating both of our new trustees.
Yes.
And we look forward to working with you soon. Item 12F is Community Services Millage. Mr. Opsimer.
Good evening again, Supervisor Jackson and board members. So on February 15th, this last appeared on your agenda, and at that meeting we discussed whether or not to pursue a renewal, a simple renewal, a heavily override, and which ballot to put this question before voters. It was the decision of the board to continue with the staff recommendation for a simple renewal and to put it on the August 2nd, 2022 ballot. This does give us the fallback in the event that something unexpected were to happen with this millage, that we would have the November election. Just to walk you through the brief history of this millage, it was originally passed by voters in 2002. It was a 0.1 mill levy at that time, and it supported 3 different services: senior programs, parks and recreation, and human services. when it first expired and the board had to consider its renewal options in 2012, it did decide to increase it by 0.05 mil increase, and that 0.05 was dedicated for senior programming. So the way that this has evolved over time, with that 0.05 increase, we have to decide how the Headley rollback will apply. Will it apply to the broad list of services that are funded under 0.1 mil, or the senior-specific portion of 0.05? So the proposal before you tonight is to hold harmless the 0.05 for senior services and to put the Headley rollback on the 0.1 for all three services. So this will go before voters, and I can see Supervisor Jackson's looking at me with interest on that, so let me try to describe that one more time. So there's two layers to this millage. We have the 0.1 mil, which supports all three services. So essentially that the revenue derived from the 0.1 mil can go to senior programming, Parks and Rec, or Human Services. When the board decided in 2012 to increase this millage by 0.05, it restricted the revenue from that increase to senior programming specifically. So predominantly the senior center located within Okemos schools, right? So the proposal before you tonight will hold harmless that the rollback, the Headley rollback that has occurred over the past 10 years will not apply to the senior programming. It'll apply to the broad 0.1 mil that funds all three services. So basically we won't see any reduction in revenue to the senior programming, which is the lion's share of the programming for this millage. You can see that 57% of the funds go to senior center programming and senior programming in general.
Okay.
So that is the distinction that's caused by the action of the board in 2012 and how it chose to increase and restrict the new increased mills. So the resolution is prepared with the ballot language, and passage of this ballot proposal on the August 2nd ballot is needed for it to go on the winter tax bill. Happy to answer any questions.
Treasurer DeShane.
I move to adopt the resolution authorizing the ballot proposal for a 10-year renewal of the community services millage.
Support.
I've got 3 supports. Mr. DeShane.
Yeah, this is essentially a 0.15 mil for a typical Meridian Township home with a taxable value of about $140,000. The cost for this is around $25. So it's probably the smallest item on residents' tax bill. And yet, this is a millage that provides a great deal of value for our residents. The senior center program, which is open to all residents in Meridian Township. The Parks and Recreation portion of it, and we all know that our parks are being used at record numbers because of COVID. And the Meridian Human Services millage as well. We have a staff person that this millage funds that allows, and we all know Darla, she does a very great job with Meridian Cares. And this millage doesn't actually provide those subsidies that are provided to their residents. This is just for the coordination of those subsidies. Darla works with a resident experiencing financial troubles or loss of a job or family breakup, and she helps them to find housing, helps them to find resources. She connects them with those people that can help them get through this time of crisis. The food bank and or the county healthcare initiative. So and that's again open to anyone in the township to come in and get that kind of exceptional help from Darla, including transportation issues. So for 0.15 mils, about $40 for a typical household, it's tremendous value to all of our residents, both in programming, parks, and in human resources. So this is truly a no-brainer in terms of the value we get for a relatively small item on the tax bill.
Clerk Guthrie.
Thank you. I would echo those comments by the treasurer. I think earlier you stated, or maybe it was during the board deliberations of the interviews during the special meeting earlier today, that about the population age, the average age is 40 and it's trending upwards. And I think I'm 5 years away from utilizing the Meridian Senior Center services. So I know there's a large population out there that could utilize those services, and Sherry Wisdom and the team over there at the Meridian Senior Center, they do an excellent job providing programming for seniors, from exercises to games to travel logs to financial advisors coming in and giving them advice on how to file their taxes and those kinds of things. So there's just an excellent plethora of services that the Senior Center provides. It's a very nominal cost to residents to have this, and then you can go on with Parks and Recreation and those services, and Human Services. I can't tell you the number of times I've personally asked Darla questions to assist my mother as she's aging, or to assist my homeless sister who lived with us for a bit when she lived here in Okemos, and I had Darla help, two of my very dear family members, and she helped them out like she would help anyone else out. And it's just a tremendous benefit to have someone to go to when you have a family member in need, and they have no money and they have no transportation. They don't know how to get around. They don't know how to fill out a Medicaid form. They don't know that they can get an ambulance waiver and how to fill out an ambulance waiver. And it can be daunting to fill those things out. And when you're an aging person, it's difficult to even understand what those forms mean. And so I really appreciate these services that are provided to our residents in our community, and I'm happy to support this.
Anyone else? Trustee Lewinsky.
I would echo everything you've said about our services. One question for Assistant Manager. I'm trying to wrap my head around how the Headley rollback amendment works, and why we've had to roll it back from 1.5 to 1.485 or 83.
Yep. So it's named after Dick Headley. It was passed, it was a constitutional amendment put before voters in 1978. Voters statewide adopted it. So when we refer to it as the Headley Amendment, it's referencing its author. Essentially, there's two components. The local unit of government component is that when you look at our tax base at large, so when Manager Walsh talks about our tax base eclipsing $2 billion in value, in taxable value, what that means is every single parcel cumulatively, when you add up the taxable value of all those parcels, equates to over $2 billion. So when our tax base on a calendar year basis, the growth in our tax base exceeds the rate of inflation as set by the state, the millage rates roll back proportionately. So essentially, if our tax base grows by anything in excess of inflation, we lose that excessive revenue via rollbacks. So even if we were to do a Headley override, we're going to get a rollback this year, so we would never get the 0.15 mils. Given this year, a lot of the tax base growth, if you read Assessor Winstead's notes in the budget and in the quarterly report that's in your packet tonight, is due to a few very valuable parcels uncapping. So that means they've sold. So when a property sells, it uncaps, and that produces very large increases in taxable value, and that is what triggers Headley rollbacks. Because your property, if you own it and don't sell it, will not increase beyond the rate of inflation. It's capped at inflation. So the only thing that can trigger rollbacks is uncapping, and I forget if new development is exempt or included in the rollback equation, I forget. But I think it's exempted. So it's the uncapping of properties that causes it.
That makes more sense.
So that difference between 0.15 and 0.1483 represents the degree to which our tax base has grown beyond the rate of inflation as set by the state over the 10 years of the millage.
So if those two were uncapped this year, we're setting this for a 10-year millage just based on this year's rule?
Yeah, these numbers, when it goes on the winter tax bill, it probably is not going to be 0.1483. It's going to be rolled back again before it goes on the winter tax bill. That is just to give you a revenue picture, that is the revenue that was derived this year. So when it went on the December tax bill last year in 2021, the $283,921 is the precise revenue that we will bring in this year, that we already did bring in as of February 14th, minus any delinquent taxes that are with the county treasurer.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you. Treasurer DeShane.
Just one clarification. Headley, as you know, the taxes can go up to 5%, or the rate of inflation, whichever is less. This year we're looking at 6, 7, maybe 8% inflation. Headley caps that at 5%. So taxes will not go up over 5% any given year, regardless of how much higher the rate of inflation is.
Thank you.
The problem is that also millage rates never roll up. It doesn't self-correct. So when we went through the Great Recession and our tax base declined relative to the rate of inflation, we don't get that millage rate back unless we do Headley overrides. But it's complicating language and probably not worth the difference in this case of $3,600.
I believe excuse me.
Yes.
Thank you. I believe in 2010 there was a Headley override put before the voters in Meridian. There was not strong support by the board for it, and it failed.
Okay. All my questions addressed. The motion is to adopt the resolution authorizing the ballot proposal for a 10-year renewal of the community services millage. We need a roll call vote. Mr. Lamaster?
Trustee Sundman,
Yes.
Supervisor Jackson,
Yes.
Clerk Guthrie,
Yes.
Treasurer DeShane,
Yes?
Trustee Wazinski.
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0.
Thank you. Item 12G, American Rescue Plan Study Session. Set a date. Mr. Walsh.
Yes, thank you. As you know, the township's going to receive $4.5 million. We received 2.2, or half of that already. The other half will come in October. And we've kind of batted around about a process. I thought setting aside a time for the board to convene to discuss this would be, there's 3 meetings in a row in April. April 26th, start our meeting at 5 o'clock, and allow up to 90 minutes for the board to set, not choosing projects, but to set the process for selecting projects. That's all. Set a date for 5 o'clock on the 26th of April.
All right. Thank you. Any questions? Any thoughts? A motion? I presume Treasurer DeShane.
I move to modify the start date of our regular scheduled meeting, Tuesday, April 26th, board meeting from 6 p.m. to 5 p.m. for the sole purpose of discussing the township's American Rescue Plan funding process.
The start time, I think you said start date.
Start time from 6 to 5 p.m. Thank you.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Trustee Wazinski seconds the motion. Need for questions or further discussion? Then the motion is to modify the start time for our April 26th meeting from 6 p.m. to 5 p.m. All in favor of the motion? Please say yes.
Yes.
Raise your hands or say yes.
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 Anyone opposed? The chair votes yes. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Now we come to board discussion items, discussion only items. I'm sorry. We come to a township mileage rate, which is item 12H. Mr. Walsh.
Yeah.
That's why Mr. Walsh is still standing there, waiting for me to catch up.
Thank you, Supervisor Jackson. Our current township mileage rate is 55.5 cents per mile. The federal rate is 58.5 cents per mile. As we look at how that's impacted our team, like for folks who have to travel a distance for call-in for a water main break or that sort of thing, or reimbursement traveling. I know that one of our members is traveling to a conference here in the next couple of weeks for training. The request before you, given the excessive increase in gas prices and how that affects our team and folks traveling, the request before you is to modify our mileage rate from 55.5 up to 62.5 cents per mile.
Board members? Yes.
Thank you.
Clerk Grafton.
Thank you, Supervisor Jackson. I just have a quick question. How did you come up with this number?
Yeah,
I
so
know there was some sort of calculation about.
not really. I just decided I wanted to be a little bit higher than the federal level, given that the gas has gone up about $1.25 a gallon over the last few months. So just rather than spend a lot of time on this and see what other communities are doing, most communities are at the federal rate or a little bit less. I just went a little bit above the federal level. It wasn't scientific at all.
I think it should be noted that this is a temporary increase, and the value of that increase will be revisited based on this motion in May.
Correct. Yeah, we want to see where gas prices are, and the modification may be to ask to increase it again, depending on what's going on in the country and the world.
Okay. Ready to entertain motion if there are no further questions. Trustee Wazinski?
I'll move to increase the township's mileage reimbursement from 55.5 cents per mile to 62.5 cents per mile based on the significant uptick in gas prices. The increase shall be revisited in the first board meeting in May 2022.
Is there support? Support. Trustee with Sunderland supported the motion. All in favor of the motion to increase the township?
We should, since it involves payouts of, yeah, sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll learn. We need a roll call vote.
Clerk Guthrie,
Yes.
Treasurer DeShane,
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski,
Yes.
Trustee Sundlin,
Yes.
Supervisor Jackson.
Yes.
On behalf of our team, thank you very much.
Okay. Now we move to board discussion items. We are going to talk about the infamous village of Oakland. LLC Meridian Redevelopment Fund request number 2, and Director Clark will be our leader.
Yes. Included with your packet is a general summary. I want to start with the reason we are here this evening. So the ultimate goal this evening is a discussion of financial support through the Meridian Redevelopment Fund. The Economic Development Corporation has set a not-to-exceed recommendation for $1,250,000 to the Village of Okemos LLC for public right-of-way and easement infrastructure improvements for Ardmore, Clinton, Hamilton, and Methodist. To start, so let's do just a general summary of the things that have brought us here today. The Township Board approved a mixed-use public plan unit development for the Village of Okemos LLC for the 2-block development at Hamilton and Okemos. It is part of the PICA. The Okemos PICA extends pretty much the entirety of the Downtown Development Authority. This project is specifically on the eastern portion of Okemos and Hamilton, the north and south blocks. That was formally approved by the Township Board. There was a duration of time for the developers where they were reviewing items among themselves, and in December of 2020 to January of 21, they submitted their first amendment to that MUPUD. And that was a request to alter some of the site and to allow for a parking deck instead of below parking requirements. Through the process that was current for the MUPUD, that was a minor amendment, and so that was approved by the Community Development Director. We received a second amendment to the MUPUD in June of 2021, and it was approved, partially approved by the Community Planning Director to remove a floor and to remove the parking deck and to allow, I apologize, in January we allowed the commercial space that would have been the first floor on Okemos to convert to a flexible residential space. The final approval is 200 residential units, 32,000 square feet of non-residential space. So just to separate the two, because commercial gets people a little bit confused. Non-residential space, no one will be sleeping in the spaces that occupy first floor of Hamilton Road North and South blocks. So that is where the approved site plan for this project is. At that point, in last year, 2021, we spent about 6 months of internal discussion with the development team. There are 5 possible public infrastructure funding mechanisms available for this project. That makes it very complicated. The township is a part of 3 possible funding mechanisms: the local Brownfield Redevelopment Authority, the Downtown Development Authority, and the Meridian Redevelopment Fund that is approved and reviewed the recommendation of the Meridian EDC. The Village of Okemos LLC did receive a first grant through the Meridian Redevelopment Fund last year in 2021 for site restoration and cheating and shoring approval up to $85,000 for the site during demolition. They did not need to use the entire $85,000. They came down to $30,000 of reimbursable activities. So again, the request in front of you today is the introductory discussion of the Village of Okemos recommendation from the Meridian Economic Development Corporation for $1,250,000, not to exceed that amount. Included in your packet is a long-standing history of the things that we have done in order to get us to that recommendation so far. The Township Board body approved Treasurer DeShane and Supervisor Jackson to sit on the subcommittee, that is the Village of Okemos LLC Redevelopment Fund Request Number 2 subcommittee. Those 2 members, along with the executive chairs of the EDC, made a 5-member person subcommittee to review the request. Tuesday, March 1st, the application meeting was set. The 5-member committee met to review the application and discuss the approval. They could partially approve, deny the request, and I was very surprised to see they moved forward with a not to exceed amount at that meeting, March 1st, of the $1.25 million. That had to go back as a formal recommendation to the full body of the Meridian Economic Development Corporation. Their meeting was that Thursday, March 3rd, and the full EDC board recommended the approval of the subcommittee for the 1.25. The reason we are asking for the funding right now, and there's lots of steps in this process, again, this is an infrastructure grant, so it would go to the right-of-way and public improvements only that exist in Ardmore, Hamilton, Clinton, and Methodist streets in our downtown. The township is working very actively with the developer to be a part of these 5 funding mechanisms. The other 2 that I did not mention that are state essentially funding mechanisms is the Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy. They currently have a grant and a loan with the developer in the township, as well as the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. Those entities are working very closely with us. We've spoken with Eagle. With the grant and the loan currently approved, the developer needs to show forward progress on the project this year in order to maintain those dollars. So the developer has then submitted a request to the Redevelopment Fund as well as the Brownfield to get those approvals reviewed by the prospective boards and to finally come back to the Township Board for final approval. There was some talk about communication on the subject. There are liaisons for different corporations and commissions in the township. They are very welcome to these public meetings. These meetings are provided with full packet and communication, and I do hope to do more encouragement of those liaisons to share the information provided by the boards. Right now, the Brownfield is reviewing the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority request application that has been submitted. We do have the developers with us this evening to take us through a hopefully very brief PowerPoint presentation of the project, what it looks like, where we are, the request, specifics about where it will be used, and our steps moving forward. I would just very politely ask that we hold our questions for the developer until after we reviewed all of their wonderful, pretty pictures. Do you have any questions so far? Okay. Mr. Heltzer of Advanced Redevelopment Solutions. I'm sure you recognize his face. I see it a lot.
Thank you very much, Amber. Okay, so this is your first opportunity as an entire board to see what we've been presenting to the DDA, the Brownfield Authority, the EDC. So we felt we would take a few minutes just to introduce you to the project, probably for the first time as a group, since the amendments were approved for the PUD last year. So the amendment that she referred to, everything that you're going to see here is in conforming practice with those approvals. One other thing that was not mentioned, just to throw that out there, on January 31st, in addition to everything we've submitted thus far, we did submit our full site plan to staff for review. We did receive that review from them on February 28th. We are now in the process of responding to those questions and doing some additional work to supplement that site plan submittal. We're working very diligently with the road department of Ingham County as well as the Ingham County Drain Office. And all of that is going on concurrently to bring you this project here today. So we all know where the property is. We've all heard about why we're doing this in one of these PICAs. Very functionally obsolete area, heavily contaminated, stagnant growth. Not attracting many visitors. Blight was removed, most of it, on those two blocks. Early last year, it was completed in 2021 under the programs that was mentioned by Amber. We have two blocks, the way we would like to refer to it in all the other meetings. If you've attended any of those, we call them blocks 1 and block 2. Block 1, the north block, has 4 parcels. Block 2, the south block, has 7 parcels. We own 100% of all of the parcels in both blocks. And here's the configuration. You can see block 1 on the left and block 2. This was a very challenging project. Land assembly alone was challenging, as well as dealing with the various conditions that are on the site, especially the brownfield and the millions of dollars in environmental work that has to go into the project yet still. This is the way it looks today, be it that the snow has melted, but you can see the way it was not long ago with the snow on it. Left is north up, and to the right is south, block 2 down. The street that's in the middle, I can get my little, here, let's see here. There we go. This being Hamilton here, and this is Okemos running north and south, okay, at the top. So the project approach with what we're doing here, we want to be in a position to be able to go vertical no later than the end of this year. That means that we have some site work, we have some infrastructure work that has to begin. We're hoping that can all begin with all the approvals. There's a lot of agencies involved, including your board, that have to occur in order for that to happen, but we're hoping that as soon as the fall of this year we'll be able to do that. In fact, we'd even like to start sooner if at all possible. There's the 2 programs that we just were mentioned here. It is about $4.3 million is in the project for Brownfield. Majority of that is state tax revenues. because the DDA is capturing a majority of the local revenue. So that's how those two DDA and Brownfield Authority TIF plans work. It is leveraging the newly created millages, newly created taxes rather, from the millages and from the project that's on these sites. This is not a new tax. This is not impacting any residents on these two programs to address all of this work. It is strictly being paid for by the new taxes from this project and this project only. The project's going to invest about $85 million. That's inclusive of the environmental, the brownfield, as well as the infrastructure in order to get this project out of the ground. I mentioned these points. I'll skip that in the interest of time. The project has about 32,000 square feet of non-residential. I like the way Amber put that. That's a good way to frame it. But we are going to have office and retail and restaurant in those spaces. And I'll go through that on the renderings here in a few minutes. But we're really in a great position right now with everything that we've completed. And we've been working very hard since last fall till now. So what you're seeing here on block 1, you are looking to the northwest, Hamilton on the left, as you can see there on the road names, and then Okemos Road on the right. What's in this corner here, this hard corner, as we like to refer to it, is a planned restaurant on that corner. As you go down to the west along Hamilton, this is where the retail and offices would be located. When you get beyond this point on Okemos Road, this is where the restaurant stops, and it's residential at grade down the rest of it. All floors on floors 2 through 4 above are residential. You're looking at the other block here. We're looking at block 2, the south block. We're looking at the south, toward the southwest. And again, same kind of view. This gives you the street view down Hamilton. Again, a different hard corner, similar building with an anchor restaurant on the corner there. And then the same thing, you have retail office that is going to be fronting on Hamilton. One thing that's interesting, which you couldn't see on the other photo, the other rendering that well, but right here where my highlighter is, kind of pointing in the almost the middle of the block of Hamilton, that is a pass-through. So when you're going to come to the village, where are you going to park? Well, there is some parking on Hamilton. There's parking on all of the streets around. However, a majority of the parking is behind the buildings, hidden from view along Okemos and Hamilton. So what you would do is you pass through the building, so there's a floor 2 through 4 above you, but you're walking through an enclosed walkway to the parking that's behind. So it's a nice feature to allow accessibility to the street and still have that urban dense feel in the village. This gives you a little bit of a feel, the next couple of renderings here, what it would look like. This is block 1. We're looking along Hamilton and we're looking toward Okemos Road. This is along Okemos Road here, and that shows where the residential. This is block 2, same kind of view, looking down Hamilton towards Okemos Road, and this is looking down along Okemos Road. These are great views to give you a feel if you're walking or driving down Okemos. As you're going on the north and you're coming up to Hamilton and you make this turn here, this is what you will see. You'll see this building, which is the block 1, the face. And as you make that turn and you go down Hamilton, as you're walking, this is what you'll see walking down the road. So why are we here today? To discuss specifically the $1.25 million that Amber mentioned. That's our first request. So this is where it gets interesting. So hopefully you can follow along if you have questions. And we have a little graphic, I think, that explains it quite well. So we have about $3.3 million that is in infrastructure improvements that are not on the private property. These are all in public roads and right-of-ways. So this is improving, and Manager Walsh did a nice job of explaining that in the very beginning of this meeting as to what this money is going for. So this is going to improve all of those public facilities that are aging, failing, very dysfunctional, not to code. We have a lot of storm issues in this area as well. So all of these improvements would eventually need to be made, but this is the time to make them now. And we have an opportunity to leverage private dollars in order to pay for that public work. So how are we doing that? Well, the first fund is the redevelopment fund. And so this is our first request to this overall infrastructure. What this is going to allow us to do is also make application to the state of Michigan, the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. And they have a program called the Revitalization and Placemaking, or RAP program as they like to call it. And so that's a grant that will be going live tomorrow or Thursday. I've heard two different stories, but this week. And so by getting this approval in place, that will serve as our match to that grant. Very important. So then we can proceed and try to leverage state dollars to do some of this infrastructure work toward that $3.3 million. So we refer to these two programs as source funds. This is the money. It's not unlike a construction loan, but these are the source dollars that would go to pay toward that $3.3 million. So what's next? It's that DDA TIF. So the DDA predominantly is there for infrastructure and the repayment of infrastructure. So we have calculated what this project only, just these two blocks, will create for the DDA capture, and it's just over $6 million over that 20-year period. So that $6 million is what can be used to repay what we're calling a grant now, the redevelopment fund, to repay that fund. So after we build the project, that $6 million annually will go there. So here's a nice little graphic that explains how this kind of works. So we incur this cost of 3.3. We know that that's hanging out there. We have a $1.25 million request before you today. We then can apply for $1 million, that's the max, RAP program grant to the state. And that leaves a shortfall of a little more than $1 million. Well, what do we do with that shortfall? Well, there's a couple things that are going to happen. We don't need that money because a lot of the work, the balance of that work, is going to be expended next year. So that's when the road work will be completed, will be in 2023. So this times out very well. So this allows us to do two things. One, we find out if we're successful in securing the $1 million from the state. And we're also going to go out very soon for competitive bidding on our specifications that are being drafted now on the drawings that have been submitted to the township and to the road department and to the drain office and all those agencies. So once we get those approvals, we're going to know what we're building, and so then we're going to competitively bid that to contractors. So we're hoping that that 3.3 that we've got today actually becomes something less. In the end, sometime later this year, we will know what this remaining delta or shortfall is going to be. So then we can come back to the table with the township, work with staff, work with the EDC, and hopefully there'll be some additional funds there that we can go after to also then fill that gap. So in the meantime, what's going on? The project gets built, the developer pays the taxes, and over that 20-year period, $6 million is generated. So that $6 million goes to repay over time, pays back the redevelopment fund over here, and if we're in need of a third redevelopment fund ask, then that, whatever that number turns out to be, then that can get repaid also with that. And that still leaves dollars available for other infrastructure improvements that we've been talking about, that I know staff has talked to so many of you about. Burying of the power lines, Okemos Road improvements. So there's other things that that can be paid for then with the balance of the TIF revenue generated. Now this is just our project. Hopefully other projects go on in the village. Hopefully there's more investment. It takes a couple of years, but usually when a project of this magnitude, this is very transformational, that'll create spin-off, and then more investment will be made in surrounding properties. People are going to want to invest in the village when they see this project go. and they're going to want to be part of it. So then hopefully there'll be more dollars in that 20-year period to then be used toward more infrastructure improvements, which are needed along Okemos Road badly. So that's it for my presentation. Just wanted to take the opportunity to show you the project for the first time as a group and explain this a little bit more in detail. So obviously Amber and I are both here and can answer any questions.
Okay. So we've gone through a little bit of the budgetary requirements. The township staff have discussed a few things. The use of the redevelopment fund could be reimbursed by the DDA TIF over time if that's something that the township board would want. That would be an agreement between the DDA and of course the board. And then the township, by resolution, this board would pass the approval of the 1.25 for this authority. So the next steps, again, is general discussion. Should the board feel like they're prepared for action, they would have to set a public hearing date. And we would have to enter the public hearing and then close it and then move to action. So those are the final steps. The action would be an adoption of a resolution approving the fund request amount and an indication to staff to reach out to legal teams to create a redevelopment development agreement that's signed between the township and the developer. So that's the general steps of what's to happen next. But I would like to leave it open for discussion for your questions.
Treasurer DeShane.
Thank you for this overview of the village as it stands today. And I want to convey to you what I'm hearing from my neighbors and other residents is that our community really wants this. And we hope that you're as serious about going vertical this year, assuming we can do our part, that you're serious as well about going vertical this year and having this project done in 2024. That corner is an eyesore. It does not represent the community at all. And it needs to be transformational because what's there now is kind of embarrassing. And it's been that way for years, and this board has been focused on changing it the past 5 years, and previous boards have had other proposals, and I'm really hopeful that this is it, that we're going to be able to do this, and the ask you're making from the township at this point seems reasonable, and particularly with the almost $10 million in state funding you're going to be able to leverage into this project as well. We're getting pretty good return on our investment if we're bringing in $10 million in state investment as well. So this is an important development for our community. It's going to be placemaking and also transformational. It's going to allow our residents to be really proud of their village and want to bring their friends and family visiting from out of town to say, come see our village. We love living in Meridian Township, and now we have a really beautiful, quaint, attractive village center that we can take people to for restaurants and recreation, parks nearby. Lots of things can pivot out from there. And I agree with you, if something like this gets developed, there'll be other demands for future development. But till this gets done, none of that happens. So thank you for the presentation. And again, I hope you're as serious as it appears to be to get this thing started this year, because we've waited long enough. Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Sutton.
Just to review, you said that you wanted to put in one restaurant on that corner section. Is that what we're doing?
There's two buildings. There's actually 4 buildings, but they look like two. One on the north block and one on the south block. So this is the north block right here. So we call these hard corners. So each corner of Okemos and Hamilton has the north block and then the south block. So yes, these corners are right now available for restaurants.
Okay, restaurants, multiple?
One in each corner is the way they're designed.
Okay.
Yeah, specifically.
Thank you.
I think a lot of people are a little confused by the pictures. You see one image, but they are mirror image block developments. So everything that you will see on the south block is equivalent to the north block. It's as if you could take a mirror and put it up against one, and the projection is literally the other building. The pass-through is on the south block building. Again, that is the parking lot that is facing toward Red Cedar River and Clinton Street.
This gives you probably the best view here. This is that picture that you just saw. Okay, this is that restaurant space in this corner. And then you flip over to the other side and it's there. So to Amber's point, they look very similar. There is differences on when you get into the building on the first floor on either side of Hamilton, but other than that, the exterior wise, they look very same, very similar.
Trustee Sumner.
Just a follow-up. So, so when you want to go to this restaurant, you're able to drive in through that middle section and park?
No, you don't drive through. That's a walking pass-through. So you come down either Clinton or Methodist or Hamilton, and you park either on the street or you come around and park behind, in the parking behind there.
But
Yeah.
there'll probably be plenty of parking in that central area too, you know, right?
Yeah, there's some parallel parking along Hamilton here on both sides of the street, and there is also on-street parking here as
Okay.
well as Clinton, and that was Methodist, and then Clinton over here.
All right, thank you. I'm
Yeah.
just envisioning for the future. I want to go to the restaurant, so.
They all do.
Oh,
You're the
I'm
You're
not
it.
that much of a comedian.
haven't quite settled into the role.
Yeah, I'm still getting there. I hear in the street, and looking at some of your pictures, I keep losing the boulevard. The boulevard continues to be a part of this project.
Yeah, so, that's, we're working with the road department on that. Actually, they're reviewing the plans. That's always been a plan, it's always been a part, and you can see that boulevard here, and then you can see the boulevard, how it's been crafted here on the site plan. So where my highlighter is going here, my pen, that is there. The intent is, as you're coming from the east and as you cross Okemos Road, it creates a calming of traffic, a slowdown, that narrowing, that all allows for those things. You're entering a village. You're entering into a more of a quiet space, more pedestrian friendly area.
At the top of the buildings, I see trees.
Yes,
Okay.
very observant. So this is pretty cool. And it's on the other drawing as well. For the residents, we have a rooftop patio. So they're able to go up, enjoy that. They can rent the space. They can hold events, but it's for the residents. You have to keep a control on that. So yes, there are potted trees. There's greening up there so that it has a nice feel. Oop, I went too far.
Here, show the other drawing, it's got a long handle.
Oop, let's see here. We gotta go this way. You talking on the street too?
Yeah, the one that shows the Hamilton view as you're looking, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
So this is block 2. So this comes up your bird's eye view down, looking in, and you can see that rooftop amenity here. Yeah, it's just along Hamilton. That's where we want all the activity. That's where the retail, the office, the restaurant space is spilling over. So, you have that activity looking down into Hamilton.
So does this mean there's potential for some other use besides the private patio
On the rooftop?
on the rooftop?
No, that's all private to the residences. So there's 100 apartments on each block, and so the residents can go into each of their spaces above and partake in the amenities. There's other amenities in the building, other commercial uses. We have a gym that is going to be located in this area here, we call it the garden level, which is at street view, and that's under this. You're looking at a different floor plate here, but it takes up this whole space right in there.
How many parking spaces?
don't have that offhand. Do you remember, John? You don't have to look it up if you can't remember.
It's 99.
I can't remember the
Is
exact
the
number.
requirement, but you have 94.
Total.
Yeah,
But they're
so
all-
we're just shy of a couple spaces, and there's an ability to get I'll call it a variance, a waiver, is often most communities refer to as. So that's something that we're going to be working with staff on. So we still have a submittal yet to do regarding that. That was one of the.
They have 94 current, I think they need 5 more.
5 more? Okay.
And we're working on that.
And that's to address the requirements of the housing, or the housing and the non-commercial?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah, so the parking requirements are for the intended uses, so there's different calculation factors for the commercial, whether it's office or retail or restaurant, and how we're planning on leasing those spaces. So that we're making sure that we fit the calculation. But there's one calculation for that, and then there's a residential calculation.
We didn't talk about the retention on immigrants.
Yeah, I could mention that. So one of the things that has occurred since September of last year, because of the amount of contamination that's on site, we're unable to capture not only what's on site, but on the roads, and infiltrate that captured stormwater into the ground. And the reason is, and I'm glad this picture's up here, is that we have contamination on the north block, Block 1, from a former gas station that sits here on this corner. We have contamination from the dry cleaner site that's sat here, which is of hazardous levels. That's on Block 2. And then we have a couple of gasoline listed releases that are from this corner all the way down. And these gasoline releases have commingled, mixed with the chlorinated solvents from the dry cleaners operations. So while we're in 2 different drainage districts, one basically you can kind of, it's not exactly this way, but I'll use Hamilton Road kind of as the guide. They generally like slope off like this, okay? And so surface water goes in 2 different directions. However, groundwater flows in one direction toward the Red Cedar River. So working with the drain office and our environmental consultants and all our engineers, we had to come up with an alternative to address stormwater, not only on site, but all of the roads when they're improved. And the environmentally friendly way to do this is to capture all of that and discharge it nearest the river that as close as we can get it. So we have acquired property on Liverance, which is the 1 block farther south. So if you look at where Douglas J. Block, as it's often referred to, as behind there, where it's a dirt road, we own all the property on the Red Cedar River, including the house that sits there in the middle. So what we're doing is we've proposed, and this has not been approved, but we proposed that we discharge and we create a bioretention, a wetland of sorts, area where we can, during storm events, we can hold the required water that is necessary from the property and from the roads there at that location. And then it would discharge to the river. This way it gets around being flushed into the ground and then exacerbating or making that problem worse. So it's basically what would happen is if we did flush all of the stormwater on our sites, it would push all of that stormwater now into groundwater, and it would flush all of those contaminants toward the Red Cedar much more quickly, and you don't want that. So our development, while addressing a lot of the environmental, is not going to clean up the site. There's no amount of money that we can get and to do this. And so what we do is we do what's called due care. We protect the environment, we protect human health, and the development is part of the solution. So by capping the sites with buildings and parking lots and doing proper stormwater management and putting the stormwater where it really needs to go, environmentally safe, we're not exacerbating that contamination or making it worse. So I'm glad you mentioned that. And there's some things that we're working on depending on what happens with the approval there, since we do own some riverfront property. We're talking to the township about a possible accessibility, donating that property, providing an easement, park, small little micro park, something like that. So we have to get through the drain office first. We have to do what we need to do there, and then we'll look at other opportunities afterwards, and we're still committed to working with the township on that.
Clerk Guthrie.
Thank you for explaining that, Manager Walsh. That's another question I received from a lot of community members is, I thought the site was already cleaned up. Why are we still talking about, contamination on this site? So I don't know if that's another communication that can go out to the public, because I didn't quite understand it myself until you just explained it. And so I really appreciate your explanation. I also attended the subcommittee meeting on March 1st and appreciated your presentation at that as well. It was, I think it's helpful for, I think Director Clark mentioned this earlier, helpful for people to attend these meetings because it is quite complicated to understand and is quite in-depth. And, I appreciate all the work that Director Clark has done and your company has done to solve this problem in downtown Okemos. In regards to this image that's up right now, what am I looking at in regards to Building D and Building A? What is that?
So we name buildings because we have to often refer to them, and this is the first step to our construction documents for the buildings. And
so what is that empty space then where it says Building D and Building A?
Right here?
Yeah,
That's the
square.
pass-through. So
No, not the pass-through, right underneath that whole big white area.
This here?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that is, you're looking at the lower level. This is what we call the basement level on this. So this is commercial space, so it looks down into that area. So these all can be demised and used for various, retail, office spaces. And basically, they're built as an open box, and you put demising walls in there. So not unlike anything you walk in down the street. There's placements for doors, for windows, but a tenant can take one space, can take two spaces, can take three spaces. So there is basement underneath this one. This is a first floor, but there is a full basement underneath this area. This area here is the first floor. That's what you're seeing. We didn't show the demising walls because they're really irrelevant until we have a tenant and we know where to demise those. There is no basement underneath this here. It is just on block 2.
Do you, in regards to the parking, do you have to have those 5 spaces in order to get grant monies or anything like that, or is that just to meet ordinance requirements?
It's ordinance requirement predominantly, but we're working hard. We have a couple of solutions that we're working on that I'm not ready to disclose because I don't know if they're going to work out, but we are working on those.
Because I'm personally not interested in an additional 5 parking spaces. I mean, I don't know about the rest of the board members, but I'm always looking at reducing the number of parking spaces. And then in regards to the accessible parking spaces, is the access to the restaurants through the pass-through right there, or is there an access door for people with accessibility needs on the back side of the restaurant, or do they go through the pass-through and around?
That's a good question, and I wish the architect was here because I don't have that answer, just to be honest with you. Most
is all of the side street parking is some of that?
There is handicap parking located right here in these 2 corners on both blocks. That is where a predominance of the on-site handicap is, and then there is some street handicap that is required. So there may very well be, because of the proximity of where the handicap spaces are here, to get into the rear of this restaurant. There might be a rear access that way. I'll try to remember that with John, and we'll get that answered for you next time we see it.
On the back side there, Clinton and I gotta take my glasses off here for a second. On Clinton and Ardmore, especially Clinton, where those houses are, is there a lot of greenery there? I can't really tell what the buffer is between the back side of that the
Yes.
building and,
This doesn't show the landscape plan. There's all kinds of other drawings. And we did submit a landscape plan that, I don't know if we had too many comments on that, John, do you remember?
Well, it's all part of the review letter that came out of Tim's office.
Yeah, I just can't remember if there were specific things on the landscape plan, but we're working through that with staff. But there's a pretty dense green plan
Yeah.
for these blocks.
Off the top of my head, that was not the return comments on the site plan, so.
okay.
Staff knows that.
So a lot of
We're
thought-
working through that.
A lot of thought was, or is being given to the greenery along there between the homes and that parking lot, in other words.
Yeah, I know where my focus was when I was doing my review for other purposes, which is related to the state, and it's the pedestrian-friendly side of things, that there was sufficient for state approvals on prior projects on Hamilton. But to Amber's point, there might not be in other areas.
As far as I remember, I believe the landscape plan looked good. The details, we did not make any further comments to that. So what was presented by ordinance or is required is acceptable.
These are all rentals.
Yes, no owner-occupied product for the residential on this.
In the price range?
I do have that. And offhand, I can't recall that. We did that a couple of months ago for our state pro forma. That's something I can bring back to you, and I can give you rental rates for 1s, 2s, 3s. I can give you those.
And then my last question is, Trustee Sumlin was asking about the restaurants. Is there, I too, of course, am interested in restaurants because I like to eat a lot, and I can walk
We all do.
here from my house. It'll take me a mile to get there, but I can make it. Is there like coffee shops? I can't remember what else you said, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's a great point. So we don't have any current tenants, obviously, when you're at this stage. Until there's really shovels in the ground and the project's moving forward, that's when things start to become attractive for those types of tenants. The spaces that you see here in this building, why they're demised the way they are, you often will see those, what we call supportive retail, because of the residential that we're building here. So when you bring 200 apartments, and if you averaged 2 people per apartment, which will be more than that in some cases, in some of the apartments, you have 400, potential people here. You have a captive audience. So you do see, I would fully expect, we don't like to drop names or put, oh, this will be a coffee shop or this is going to be this kind of restaurant. We don't know. No developer knows until unless they have a lease, they don't know when you're doing a mixed-use development like this. So we plan for those types of uses, so the utilities and the infrastructure in those retail commercial spaces will be able to support anything that you can conceive of, really, in an environment like this.
I'm sorry, Supervisor, I have one more question.
Yes, please.
These apartments are priced per apartment, not per bed.
No, this is not a student housing project. This is an apartment. This is market rate product, and rents right now. I'll give you those the range when I see you next. I'll send them to Amber, and if you want to distribute those, be happy to share those with you. It's public knowledge already. I don't have them at my
No
fingertips.
worries. Again, thank you
Yeah.
for all the work that your team has done, and thank you, Amber. Appreciate it.
Trustee Wazinski.
Thank you as well. I'm very excited. We have been waiting a long time, and really do hope that this we can help you be successful to be
Thanks for your help.
moving forward this fall. I had a couple questions. One about just to piggyback Supervisor Jackson's discussion about the boulevard. The ones the renderings I'd seen quite some time ago showed angled parking as opposed to parallel parking. Is that something that's just not feasible?
It's not. It is all parallel parking. And so you can see where this is the boulevard. You get a little glimpse of this here. And you see how it tucks over. So you still have the flow of traffic that's able to go, and then you pull, and it's all parallel.
Okay.
There's no space, and there's no angled parking on any of the streets. It's all parallel parking.
All parallel, okay. Second question, with respect to the stormwater management, if we didn't have contamination there, how would that stormwater be managed? Would that be managed with like a retention, detention?
No, it'd be underground, under the parking lot
Okay.
is where we would put something like this on
So
a
you
project like this.
Drain
So,
it to the subsurface and it would infiltrate from there?
yeah, it would go into tanks and it would go out at a prescribed rate and infiltrate through the soils into the groundwater over time. So you have to capture a storm event that's calculated, that drives how much capacity in underground tanks that we have to have. And then those tanks over time are allowed to release at that prescribed rate into the groundwater.
Okay.
If we didn't have the contamination, that would be the ideal way to do it, is to take that rainwater, stormwater, and get it back into the ground as quickly as possible.
And filtrate it, considering there's some non-point source pollution we're gonna capture from the parking lots, but in this case.
Yeah, so that other area that we're going to create in Liverence will have a lot of, wetland type plants and everything in there. And the goal is to be able to cleanse that there. It'll infiltrate there and direct discharge when it can during high storm events.
Excellent. Oh.
Filtration system. It's
Correct.
nothing more than really a filtration system.
Yeah, kind of like
Water to travel through.
Right, like grow spec. Another question regarding, so you mentioned that where the clerk was asking about the white spot, so that's the area that can be modified for whatever we need. You mentioned there's a basement, so even though we have hydrocarbons and solvents, we can still go subsurface?
So subsurface doesn't matter. You're on the right track, though.
Okay.
We have to protect these buildings because of the chemicals in the ground. So they will be lined, they will be fully vented. It's called a vapor mitigation system. So yes, we are protecting the buildings and the occupants from the contaminants that are in the ground. So that is one of the things that we're in design on right now. We're at about 75% of our construction documents are complete, which I was mentioning at one of the other meetings that Treasurer DeShane brought up. We're very committed. You don't get this far down the road to submit all these plans, have everything engineered and designed, including your building construction documents. So, with everything that we're doing, we're approaching about $1 million in September just in things you haven't seen yet, that are happening behind the scenes that go into a project like this to get built. So yeah, substantial work has gone into that, including the protection of those buildings and design of that.
And so that vapor barrier, is there long-term like air monitoring that happens to protect
Not
the
long-term,
residents?
no. There's a testing period, and that varies depending on the system that's put in. But yeah, it's fully enclosed. There's a redundant system in here. This is probably one of the most protective vapor mitigation systems that I've worked on for buildings like this. And that's just due to the nature of what we're dealing with. So it's necessary though when you have chlorinated solvents like this.
Mm-hmm. Okay, last question, Supervisor. The facade, would you mind going back to the rendering of the facade? Is that exact, or is this already your plan, or?
This is already a plan, and like I said, we're about 75% completed on the construction document. So things that do change on occasion when we're going out for the material aspect of this, sometimes the colors can change a little bit. Awning colors, for example, can change. We would have loved to have, you see there's balconies here. The way we've got this design is that once the power lines are removed, we have designed the building so we can actually attach those Juliet-type balconies on the Okemos Road side. So our hope is that once the power lines are removed, we're able to do that. But until then, we can't have people out there within, not an arm's length, but, to do something stupid, we have to protect against that, so.
And the power lines won't be buried prior to development?
No, that would occur with the Okemos Road
Oh,
reconstruction.
gotcha, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So the only comment I want to make on that is, considering this is going to be here forever, I was in my head imagining something a little bit more historical looking, if you will, a little less. This looks somewhat modern to me, so that was just my question. But I understand facades are expensive, and so what is that facade? Is it wood or is that brick?
I wish the architect was here too.
And I can work with Director Schmidt too, and just.
Yeah, we can, and when we submit those plans too, those are going to be submitted in April. A lot of those details, I see Tim nodding his head. So we'll have all that information for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for everything.
Treasurer DeShane.
Just one follow-up question on parking. Is that 95 spaces per block? Is that correct?
It's total.
Total, yeah.
Yeah, it's total. I think originally it was about 100 spaces per block, and with the changes to the MUPUD, it's probably split now. It's 99 total spaces for the 2 blocks.
Where are people going to park? You got 200 households, and in the U.S., this will be a less car-driven population than typical, but the typical U.S. is 1.88 cars per household, so potentially you'd need 350 or so parking spaces plus the commercial. So where are people going to, are you going to make them sell their car before they move in, or what's your plan here?
Yeah, so I think what would be best is that when we see you next time, we're working on our parking plan,
Okay.
and we're working diligently on that. I think it would be best for us to answer some of those questions
Sure.
more specifically, so you can see what we're doing to that concern on some of the things that we have concerns with, so we can address more parking. So we're in the process of, trying to handle that in a little bit more.
It'd be a shame to develop commercial space and then people have to park down on Mount Hope to get up there to go to the restaurant or the coffee shop. But, okay, I look forward to that. Thank you.
Yeah. I think it just glitched out.
It does.
Oh, okay.
Every once in a while.
Okay. Mr. Howard, thank you. Director Clark,
Yes.
this is before us now to get the board approval of the EDC recommendation for use of $1.25 million from the redevelopment fund. And so, is progress on this project dependent on that happening quickly?
Yes.
For the match, yeah.
For the match for the MEDC, but one thing we also have as a financial support is the Department of, I'm sorry, hold on, let me get it, Environment, Great Lakes and Energy. Eagle is the grant for almost $1 million, and the loan with the township that the developer will pay for site for Brownfield, right, for site contamination. So a total, if with the request from the developer for the township's Brownfield Redevelopment Authority approval, and for Eagle is about $6 million. Eagle has a requirement to have forward progress on the project this year, otherwise we may not be acceptable for those grants anymore. They have told us that it would either need a new developer or a new project proposed to support those funds. They're holding those funds as a county entity or as a state entity from other communities that need the same contamination removal. So they are kind of our benchmark that we need to show them that work is being done in order to continue to have access to those funds.
So my question then is that the sooner that 1.25 million is approved by this body, the sooner we can move to securing those funds from Eagle and MEDC.
Correct.
So what it looks like is we have to decide if we're ready to receive the recommendation and proposal from the EDC as an introductory proposal. Oh, we have to have a public hearing.
Yes.
Yes, we have to set a time for a public hearing on that issue.
Yes. I was trying to keep in line with most board practices. Typically, you like to discuss a major item like this. So, but I did include in the packet a possible motion to move to approve the Village of Okemos LLC Meridian Redevelopment Request Number 2 and establish the public hearing date. And I just put a date in there, but we would establish the public hearing date. We would have to hold that public hearing, and then not less than 20 days, not before 10 days, have that public hearing, and then you could move for action in either way.
Board, what is your pleasure?
I mean, I don't see any harm in moving it forward. I don't have any reservations. We're not really waiting on anything but very detailed specifics that we don't really have much say in.
So we would ask Director Clark to bring us a date, a motion for setting a date for a public hearing.
Or could we suspend the rules and I make the motion?
Yes.
You could.
So I'll propose to, well, Treasurer DeShane's not here.
Oh.
We got 4.
So was your question, can I ask?
The first question is, should we suspend our rules and make a motion to set a hearing date for the proposal?
Is that your motion?
I was waiting for Treasurer to get back.
He's coming.
Make the motion and second it if it wished to and commence discussion prior to going to the roll call.
Okay. I propose to suspend our rules and make a motion to approve the Village of Okemos LLC Meridian Redevelopment Fund Request Number 2 and establish a public hearing date for April 4th, 2022, or what the director decides, to receive public comment.
Support.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Any other comments, discussions? Are you clear on
Yeah.
what we're going to vote on? I believe this does not need a roll call, is that correct? All right, the motion is to set aside our rules. All in favor of the motion, please say yes.
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 Yes. Motion passes unanimously. Now, we have suspended our rules. Are you ready to make a motion to
Yep.
do what you wanted to do?
You think I'd know this by now. I would like to, Supervisor.
Yes.
I move to approve the Village of Okemos LLC Meridian Redevelopment Fund Request Number 2 and establish the public hearing date for April 4th, 2022, or at Director Clark's discretion to receive public comment.
Support.
I'll recognize Clerk Guthrie at this point. Ladies, would the two of you like to support your motion?
I would just say that I appreciate the presentation. I'm excited for this moving forward, and appreciate all the work the director's done, and I don't see any reason to delay.
To lay it further?
I concur. This project's been a long time coming. I remember when the manager walked in the door and asked the directors, you know, what projects do you think are most important? And half of us, I think, said downtown Okemos. So I'm very impressed with the presentation, impressed with the people who are working on this project and their integrity. And I look forward to working together on this as a board and with the director and with the developers on what we can do to improve this area in downtown Okemos.
And I would just ask Director Clark, April 4 is satisfactory to meet your needs?
Is April 4th is your next meeting date? It's not.
No.
I don't think. April 12th, which would be 26 days. So it does not meet our requirement 'cause it can't be more than 20 days.
Can't be more than 20 days?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had figured that we would have a second discussion on the 12th and I would be setting it for the 26th. So I'm sorry, you guys have surprised the heck out of me right now. We can bring it back the 12th as a motion for public hearing at that time if it's more suitable for you.
Well, the motion was for April 4th or whatever was whatever the director found the public hearing date was supposed to be.
That
Was
was
the motion, yes.
That was included in the motion?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Because Director Clark had said she did the math but wasn't sure
Okay.
Yep.
what our decision was.
Okay.
So as made, the motion will serve your
Yes.
needs?
Yes, it will.
All right. All in favor of the motion, please say yes.
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 Chair votes yes, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we move on to 13B, an update on the Grand River Avenue M43 construction project. This is Assistant Manager.
Yes, good evening, board members and Supervisor Jackson. It's been a long evening, so I'm going to try to work through this as quickly as I can. It is a complex project. So the first item that I'm going to put up for everybody to review. Thank you, Mr. Geeves. Okay, so this is in your packet, but this is the actual map for the scope of the work that will comprise the Grand River Avenue and M43 project. So the western boundary of the project is the bridge over the CN Railroad track. So beginning at the base of the bridge on the eastern end, right? So if you're traveling eastbound, you go past Park Lake, over the bridge. At the foot of the bridge, that's where the work will basically commence from the western boundary. It'll go to Oak Point Court, which is one of our neighborhood roads, which is between Cornell Road and Van Atta. So that's where the project will end at the eastern boundary. Let me pull up a different chart. Generally speaking, to go over the time frame, this is a 2022 and 2023 project. Project scope has changed immensely. Originally, this project was in the 5-year TIP plan, so the Transportation Improvement Plan that MDOT maintains for 2023 and or 2024, I can't remember exactly. Due to changes in state funding, MDOT first accelerated the project. They actually wanted to move forward last year. We were not prepared based on short notice from MDOT to proceed with the water main work. So if you drive on Grand River across from Playmakers right now, you're going to notice excavators and construction equipment on site. That is actually our project for the water main work. We are relocating the water main so that it will be inside the retaining wall across from Playmakers so that we protect the integrity of the road and the pathway. And we'll be using sheeting and shoring, which is the same application that the Village of Okemos actually used to protect the utilities in downtown Okemos, right? So we're essentially driving steel plates in using excavators to reach stable soil levels beneath the wetland to provide a retaining wall. So a very industrial-built retaining wall to protect the integrity and to stop our pathway and the north end of the road from sinking into the wetland. So real quick, just to go over the construction timeline, this bar right here where my cursor is denotes when the ADA sidewalk and curb and gutter concrete work will occur. So the concrete work is usually the first phase of any road project. And so as of right now, we anticipate that work will begin on April 4th and hopefully conclude around the end of April or early May. So that's where they're going to go in and they're going to take out segments of the curb and gutter and piece in curb and gutter where the curb and gutter is failing. So basically the entirety of the section across from Playmakers where the wetland is, all that curb and gutter is going to go. And so during that portion of the project, what we will see is the outer lanes closed. So east and westbound traffic will be closed. The red X's denote that the outer lanes will be closed, and so east and westbound traffic will move on those inner lanes only. Going to stage 2 of the project. This is when the intensive reconstruction will start to occur, right? So we're raising the surface of Grand River Avenue. It's half a mile roughly that's being raised 2 feet, but it's in 2 different sections. So near the Nakoma intersection and near the Okemos Road intersections. These are the lowest portions of the roadway. So those are the portions that flood when the river crests, or we have a storm event. Even a 10-year storm event will flood those. And the road department and the police department have to come out and close the road. Chief Plaga's crews many times before have had to come out and close it before the road department can get there with their signage to officially close the road, right? And we've had to rescue cars and vehicles from those intersections. So we're raising that about 2 feet, and so that intensive reconstruction work is actually occurring in this time interval right here. So end of April through late fall. So late October is the current schedule for those 2 segments of work near the Nakoma and the Okemos Road intersections and raising the road. The resurfacing work, so this will be from Marsh Road traveling east, so traveling past Home Depot, Tom's Food Service, and past Cornell, but short of Van Atta. And so this is going to be simple mill and resurfacing. This goes pretty quickly. As you can see, they anticipate completing that resurfacing work hopefully by the end of July. However, there's a couple things that are complicated with that. So the initial phasing of that work is represented here. They will start by closing the outer lanes, right? So they're going to do curb and gutter work and the concrete work and the pathway work, ramps, ADA compliance, any of the concrete repair first, and close those outer lanes. Then they will mill and resurface the outer lanes. Then they will close, they will do all that work and keep the inner lanes working and close the outer lanes. Then they will reopen the outer lanes and do the left-hand turn lane and the inner lanes, east and westbound. The complicating factor is when you get to Cornell Road, because that's where we go down to 1 lane each way and a left turn lane. This is where it's going to get dicey, because we are going to have to have the eastbound and westbound traffic in 1 lane represented here until that road work can be completed to reopen lanes in both directions. So you can see that that's going to be a pinch point, and that is going to be a very complicating factor for moving east and west through the township, because it's going to greatly reduce your ability to go in either direction unless you happen to get there just as the laborers on the ground flip their sign to allow you to proceed. Stage 4, so this is the intensive reconstruction areas. This is also going to create pinch points just due to the level of traffic that we have. There's a lot higher traffic here, so that's going to cause some issues. So this is basically on the north side of the road is where we will have east and westbound traffic during the reconstruct of the left turn lane and the 2 southbound lanes. So then we will stagger it and do the middle lanes and then we will stagger it towards the end, and we will have east and west traffic staggered on the south side of the road. Okay. So this is the 2023 work. So between the CN Railroad Bridge and Marsh Road this year, we are only doing the concrete work, so the curb gutter pathway, any of the concrete repairs, and the intensive reconstruction, meaning raising the road bed and putting in the sheeting and shoring. So the simple resurfacing where the ground or where the road is the appropriate height, or at least close enough to the appropriate height to prevent flooding during a 10-year storm event, that resurfacing will occur next year. So we will have some closures in 2023 between the CN Railroad Bridge and Marsh Road. So just going back to the timeline of events, stage 7 and 8 is here. And so you can see that, mill and resurfacing work goes a lot quicker. So at least in 2023, it'll only be about 2 months, maybe 2.5 months, where we have some lane closures in this stretch. So that is kind of an overview of the timeline. Another facet of the project is the offsetting cut, which is going to occur on township property. It's the property for the central fire station. My staff and I have been working with Chief Hamill to make sure that we do not disrupt the central fire station during this process. So the central fire station is located right here. Here's the service drive off of Central Park. And so the contractor, Hoffman, is the contractor that MDOT hired. They are also doing our offsetting cut. And so they'll be coming into the southeast corner of the service drive right here. And that's where they will be making a curb cut and going back southeast into the parcel. They already started doing tree clearing, and the chips from that are actually going to be donated to Okemos and Hazlitt schools as of this morning, because our Parks Department did not have use for them, but they've been tree clearing to get their equipment back here to make the offsetting cut. And so we are going to remove more cubic yards from this floodplain. It's the same floodplain as the floodplain that exists on Grand River today. Then cubic yards are brought in to raise the road grade. The cubic yard measurements are actually up here in the top right-hand corner, so that you can see that the offsetting cut that will occur on the site is greater than the fill coming in. To really address like a 25-year storm event, we would need to raise the road about 4 feet, roughly. So perhaps 25, 30 years from now, when we've realized the full life expectancy of this project, that might be something that we can look at pursuing with MDOT again. Originally, this was about a $2 million project to do a simple resurfacing. It has now evolved into about a $14.5 million project, which is not completely uncommon as they get more. Once they start engaging with the local stakeholders and everything, it's common to see that. Like the sheeting and shoring work is really unavoidable. There's no point to fixing the road and allowing the soil erosion to continue to occur there, right? Briefly, just to update you on what's occurring in the public space on this. Give me just one moment to flip back to my memo. In your packet, I did provide some background context on the public hearing that MDOT is holding. It's the second. It is, in fact, now going to be held on Wednesday, March 23rd, 6 to 8 p.m. It's a virtual event. Chief Plaga already made outreach to our neighborhood leaders and our HOAs. Manager Walsh already made outreach to our boards and commissions. Director Clark has made outreach to the business community, just to give them a heads up that this is coming. And we just received the public credentials for logging into the public meeting at about 4 o'clock today, I think it was. So we will begin educating the public, and of course, Communications Manager Yates is also working on just the standard communications that'll go out on all the social media platforms and on the township website. So we were working to promote that. Again, it's the second public hearing. The first, I should say, public meeting. It is not an official hearing. But the first public meeting was held back on November 4th. There is a link to that meeting, which is on YouTube if you wish to go back and revisit that. And then we did have a pre-construction meeting with all the regional governmental units from the Drain Commission office to all of our township staff. We probably had close to 20 staff from the township alone on the pre-construction meeting with MDOT on March 7th. Just reviewing my notes to see if there's anything else I would really flag on this. I think that's a pretty thorough overview. I'm happy to answer any questions. It's obviously a pretty complex project, but I hope that gives you a pretty firm understanding of the phasing and the scope of the work.
Board members, Trustee Brzezinski.
It's a mouthful this late. Just, this is a big job. So thank you for taking the time to explain. Just one question I've already been asked. Given Dobie Road and our bridge and the Dobie Road traffic, can you explain to us how these two projects happened at the same time?
Yes, that's a good question. I don't know if it was coordinated necessarily with intent. Both projects have been moving targets for a long time, right? We had emergency repairs made to the bridge, the newer of the two bridges over the Red Cedar River in 2015 and 2016. It lingered for 2 construction seasons. That would have been the ideal time to replace the bridges, to take them out and replace them with a single bridge. There was no funding at that time, so the bridge project was delayed until the county road department could secure funding. Conversely, this project on Grand River Avenue was slated for 2023 or 2024 and was bumped up due to the road bonding that the state has done. So even before, ARP and COVID and BIF, the federal infrastructure funding, this project was moved up just based on the bonding that the state was doing that freed up additional resources. So it was just kind of happenstance with the timing there, but it's going to make this year more difficult, but both of these projects are exceedingly difficult in and of themselves, so I think having them both in the same year is actually a good thing, just to get through.
Rip the Band-Aid off.
So in short, it's delineated by funding and take advantage of the additional funding that the township wouldn't have to pay. We have to do it at this time.
Yep. And then we have had some contention. If you look in your packet, this presentation I was just giving with the timeline, this is the new one that I just got from MDOT as I've been trying to get all the most current information. I will say that MDOT has been very good at communicating. They reached out on the public hearing and asked for input, whether we had input on what day, virtual, in-person, hybrid. They've been very good at communicating, better than other governmental units in my short experience. If you go to the old presentation, which I just pulled up, that is the one in your packet. There are the 3 pedestrian islands, which I didn't touch on. There's one over by Campus Hill Apartments. There's one between Meyer and Best Buy. And then there's the one by Washington Heights, which is kind of near the dealerships and Home Depot, where there's apartments on the south side of Grand River Avenue. One of our DDA members has had concerns. He owns the property under McDonald's. Director Schmidt and I have worked on the issue with the shopping carts, as has Director Clark. Meyer has been doing a much better job of checking that site. And just yesterday, our DPW crew took away a handful of shopping carts that were in the right-of-way, and Director Schmidt notified the property owners on where they can find their property. So we're working to address the constituent concerns specific to the CATA bus stop pad in the right-of-way and the shopping carts that inevitably accumulate there. So, but the pedestrian islands, as as they are in the plans are denoted in this old presentation. This is from the November 4th meeting, 2021.
Since we've got you at the podium, moving to the bridge construction, last time we spoke, there was a holdup because of the AT&T lines. I was by there today, there's like they're taking out one of the bridges, so has there been acceleration of activity there?
Yeah, I have not received as good a communication on that project as I have on M43. So I'll need to reach out and get the best information, but Sunday was the first day that they were able to do the Sunday work. So if there was demolition occurring, that's a very good sign. That means AT&T has concluded their splicing of the fiber.
There's some serious demolition work going on this morning.
Yeah, taking the bridge out shouldn't last too long, but the delay in reopening southbound traffic is going to be constructing the new bridge.
Okay. Any other questions on M43? Mark? Thank you, Mr. Opsimer.
Absolutely. Thank you, Supervisor Jackson and Board.
We come to item 14, comments from the public. Gentlemen. Item 15, other matters and board member comments. Clerk Guthrie.
Yes, real quick. I want to give a shout out to Director Clark and to the communications team for their recognizing female business owners in the township. I've enjoyed seeing those posts on Instagram and social media and recognizing their contributions to our community. So thank you.
And if there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. All in favor of the motion to adjourn, please say yes.
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 Opposed, no. We are adjourned.